Works meeting. We're meeting in the lower level of the Rutland Public Library. We are on Zoom for remote participation as well as viewing. We're also being live streamed on local access television and recorded for re-airing on local access television, YouTube, and other social media outlets. Can we please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving right into our first order of business, minutes, treasury warrant, and payroll. We have approval of treasury warrant 24-27 and payroll 24-PW27 and 25-1 and 25-PW1. Is there a motion to
Make a motion to approve treasury warrant 24-27 and payroll 24-PW27 and 25-1 and 25-PW1.
motion, is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Questions, comments, concerns? I think this meeting and next meeting there'll likely be two. It's the closeout of fiscal year 24 and the start of fiscal year 25. Is that correct, Austin?
We'll have one more warrant for fiscal year 24 and also just a smaller payroll warrant for some public safety and recreation that worked on the, was it the 30th? Sunday.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second aye.
That's an aye.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. We have approval of meeting minutes from June 24th, 2024. This was a regular scheduled meeting. Everyone was in attendance. We were select board and board of public works that night.
Make a motion to approve meeting minutes from June 24th, 2024, regular meeting minutes.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Any questions, comments, concerns, edits, corrections? Hearing none, roll call, Harry.
Second aye.
That's an aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. We have a full house here. I think there's at least a couple people here for public comment. I just ask for name and address.
Jonathan Miller, 27 Brunel Drive. I'm the president of Rutland Little League. I just came today to more informative. We plan on having a concert at Marsh Field on Saturday, August 31st to celebrate 50 years of the field. I have flyers if you want them, but we've already talked to Austin and Tamika about a month ago, 2 months ago. We already have the Midnight Riders lined up, Seven Saws Brewing lined up. They'll be applying for a one-day liquor license. We've checked in with the events committee to make sure there was no conflicting events going on that day. So I think we've done all due diligence on it. The next step for me is to talk to the police chief to make sure that our plan is to hire a police detail for that night to make sure that parking and people can cross the street just fine. The plan is for the Midnight Riders to play from 6 to 9 that night. But really, I'm here in case you all have any questions.
And it's a ticketed event, so, right,
It'll
so,
be ticketed. It's well bracelets for people to get onto the field.
and it'll be on the field, people will be allowed on the field. Are you
Absolutely.
suggesting bring chairs, blankets, that kind of stuff, like?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Anyone have any, I mean, as long as you're following the permitting process, you know, Seven Cells needs to apply for the one day. The food trucks, if you're doing food trucks or anything, have their permits through town and everything as well, so I think, you know,
I have
coordinating
the
with public
script from
safety.
Austin to give me the script and how to host events, so
Perfect,
I think we're pretty good shape in that front.
very good. Anyone have any questions for Jonathan?
Sounds great.
Yeah?
Awesome, thank you.
See you all there.
Thank you. And Tamika, maybe if we can add that to the calendar, like we're doing with the Hope Lives Here walk and everything also, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else here for public comment? No, okay. Yeah, name and address, please.
Michael Pantos Jr., 32 Palmagussit Road, Unit 7. I received a letter from the select board denying my abatement request for the $40 stormwater tax, and quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about or even thinking about stormwater tax, as I'm sure some of you are. And my question for the select board, based on the letter I received, is this tax taxing the property itself, or is this taxing the owner? Because I live in a building with multiple units, and I was told, according to this letter, that, quote, "Since the units are individually owned and the building contributes to the stormwater system, it was the recommendation of the staff that this request not be abated. After thoughtful discussion, the board was unanimously in agreement that the abatement shall not be granted." So is this tax based on what I'm contributing to the system, or is this based on each resident that owns part of a building? I'm a little bit confused because technically I'm a subset of a parcel. My other question is, where is the explanation to where the $40 came from and the fee schedule for years here on out to represent that this is not a blank check and that this can be forecasted?
Sure, through the chair, thank you for the question. You'll recall at a town meeting, I think in 2023 annual town meeting, the Stormwater Enterprise Fund was established for the purpose of compliance with our MS4 permit. The funding mechanism came later on that year at a special town meeting. That's where the $40 fee came from. It essentially just took the budget of $114,000 divided by all the developed parcels, where it got to the $40 fee. I mentioned developed parcels, so per MS4 compliance and some of the best practices in the industry, they look at each developed parcel, so whether you have a structure on your parcel or impervious parking facilities, you are contributing to the stormwater system. Also, as a property owner in the town of Rutland, you are also a part owner of our drainage and stormwater system throughout the community. So all of that goes not just towards your property and some of the stormwater and discharges that come from that, but also just, again, being a Rutland resident and contributing to the system across the community. I don't know if that answered all of your questions.
That answered most of it. What is needed on my part in order to get that explanation in writing or some sort of
Yeah, so
explanation?
rutlandma.gov/stormwater has all of that information. It does.
I'll send an email request.
If you wanna stop by, I can show you exactly where it is. But also, you had a question about future years. So rates for utilities are set annually. So you'll recall at the annual town meeting that just occurred, the budget of approximately $300,000 was set by town meeting, so that will equate to approximately an $80-some-odd stormwater fee for fiscal year '25.
So this is not based on a percentage, this is based on taking the,
Takes the
we'll
budget,
call it the
divides it
bill
by the
divided
parcels.
by those that are paying into the bill for the town?
Correct. All developed parcels. So for example, a piece of land, for example, that doesn't have any structure or any parking facilities,
Yes.
does not classify as a developed parcel.
So the reason behind my question, if I may explain that, is if I have a building that's say 4,000 square feet and with a we'll call it a parking lot, I'm gonna pay $40. But if I am one owner out of four in a building with 4,000 square feet, I'm also paying $40, which makes for a total of, let's see, $160. So I don't see the reasoning behind that. My last question is there a future plan to make this based on impervious surface area as other towns have done, or are we keeping up with this structure?
No, so a lot of communities like Rutland, I think, started with the flat free structure in the beginning. You'll recall the town of Shrewsbury. If you look into it, they also started with a flat free structure, and then once they kind of built up their resources in their engineering and stormwater utility department, they eventually got to that more complex funding mechanism. We're not there yet, right? We just started the utility this year. So I think obviously we have a lot more resources in FY '25 to be able to think about things a little bit differently. I can't make any commitment to when we'll change the funding structure. As of right now, once we do a little bit more work, I think that we'll be able to answer that a little bit better.
So nothing's been decided on the future of that right now?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Mike, for the question. Anyone else here for public comment? Anyone online? Hearing none. Moving into communications, member comments, announcements, and town administrator update. I just wanted to thank everyone, the 4th of July committee and everyone who participated for a great 4th of July week. Rutland sure knows how to go big. And this year did not disappoint. So thank you for everyone who participated, made it happen. And I appreciate the fun that was shared by it all. I think there was a unfortunate death of a child in our community a few weeks ago. And so I just wanna express you know, the board's sympathy and care to that family. It's a sad situation, so sorry, she was a Central Tree student. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Member comments? Austin, go ahead for the comments.
Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I can wait until after the new business to do my update. I'll be very brief at the end.
Sure thing, if the board's amenable to that, I'm okay with that. And if then moving into old business quickly if we can, I think we had at our last regular scheduled meeting, we were presented kind of with an updated policy for requests to alter outdoor premises for retail liquor licenses as this new state law had changed some of the requirements. So we had the policy previous, we had seen it, I had asked anyone who had questions or comments or concerns to kind of go through the office so Tamika could collate everything. Again, this is a policy, so it's amenable to be amended, or it's able to be amended easily at the board level if we realize that things need clarification or anything. Does anyone have any conversation about it? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt as presented then, if everyone's okay with it.
So moved.
A second. We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second and I.
That's an aye.
Galvin I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Thank you, Tamika, for pulling that together too. Moving into new business, if the board is amenable, I was going to try to change the order a little bit, and take the item E, ratify the IMA for the expansion of regional animal control service, first. The board's amenable to that.
That's fine.
Austin.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. So as the board recalls, we've been, over the past several months, as a result of some of the goals that were set forth by the select board at the very beginning of last fiscal year, we've been looking at ways to enhance or increase our regional opportunities with our neighboring partner communities. The success story of Rutland for several years now has been, actually since 2013, has been a regional animal control operation. As a result of a Community Innovation Challenge grant from the Commonwealth, Rutland established a regional animal control with communities of Barre and Princeton, and since expanded that to Paxton and New Braintree. We were approached by Central Mass Regional Planning Commission and some of our partner communities that were members of CMRPC, communities of Boylston and West Boylston, as well as Leicester and Sterling, to consider the possibility of further expanding the animal control operation. Through those discussions, we talked about staffing, we talked about appropriate supplies and services for an expanded operation. Since then, the towns of Leicester and Sterling have decided not to move forward with the regional opportunity. The towns of West Boylston and Boylston have approved joining the intermunicipal agreement and joining the regional services effective July 1st. I want to just give a credit to our police chief and our animal control officer, Jen Ford. Particularly Jen, she does an outstanding job providing more than just the common animal control that I think we all think of, like dogs and cats. She really goes above and beyond. She actually brought a hummingbird into our office today. She brought a raccoon a couple weeks ago as well. It's one of her passions is wildlife, but she does a great job, I think, with, again, the normal service of it. So we're respectfully asking the select board to consider ratifying the IMA tonight, which includes the additions, Boylston and West Boylston. We also have town administrators from each of the communities here tonight to answer any questions that the board may have, but again, asking for your consideration of this.
Questions, comments?
Austin, is there a cost sharing on this?
There is.
And there's a contract for that?
There is.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there additional cost for Rutland to do this?
Yes, so our proportionate share will increase by $76 per this arrangement. So Great question, actually. So we talked about some of the services that would be expanded by adding approximately a population of 12,000 people. We're proposing adding a position of 24 hours for an assistant animal control officer to cover not only the existing communities, but also Boylston and West Boylston, and those hours will be coincided a little bit with Jen for some of the services that she provides. We also slightly increased some of the supplies and services just to accommodate for additional work. But again, that proportional cost share equates to approximately I'll just round up and say an $80 increase for Rutland.
Per contract year?
Yes. No, scratch that, I'm sorry. Just for this fiscal year 25 budget. So obviously, as we go through the budget process and talk about FY 26, our cost share will be proportionate to that based off of our population.
And what services do we provide above and beyond what we normally do to these towns now through that contract? Do we or don't we?
Yeah, so all the services and more that I just described are provided not only to Rutland, but all of our partner communities in this IMA.
So our animal control officer goes out to West Boylston,
Yes.
and they go all there, but with their stuff?
Yes.
How much are they paying us for this, if I can ask?
So the FY 25 assessment is $27,820 and 72 cents for West Boylston, and $20,151 and 82 cents for Boylston.
Okay, and so, all right, so that includes that we're absorbing the gas, the insurance, they're paying for all that kind of
Correct.
stuff.
Yeah, so we have a standard budget, so the budget for FY 25 is set at just over 141,000, and those costs are then assessed to each community by their proportionate population.
And did we have a time frame for the contract? How many years?
So this IMA is 1 year, can be extended up to 25 years, which I think is the max term in Mass General Law, but just for this year, it's a 1 year intermunicipal agreement.
And I have one more question. Anybody else have any?
I do, I was just wondering, this covers wear and tear on the vehicle as well?
Yeah, so those are assumed, I think, in our normal cost of the budget, so our supplies, services, and other charges. The vehicle, as of now, currently operated by ACO Ford, is under a lease agreement, so there's some costs that are included in that standard lease agreement.
The person, the part-timer, would you say, how many hours?
24 hours.
24 hours a week. Does that make her an employee of the town?
Yes.
And if they decide not to renew the 1 year contract, what does that mean for the employee? That position no longer exists, or we're still gonna pay for it?
Yeah, well, I think as a part of our normal operations when assessing the level of services that are provided by that, hypothetically, I don't think that'll happen, but hypothetically, if that did happen and our partner communities back out, we'd obviously have to look at services and see what is appropriate for the communities that are still in the partnership.
Okay, and I'm not questioning the chief or the animal control officer, but do both of them feel that this part-time person is necessary to allow her to extend her duties now to go to these other places?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else on the board have any questions, comments?
It is part-time at 24 hours, or is that considered full-time?
It's enough to receive benefits, so I think we call it a permanent part-time position per our personnel policies, but they'll receive a prorated share of our standard benefits. And also, just regarding benefits, any associated benefits, we do have indirect costs included in this budget as well, so those are also offset by the assessments.
That's my question. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for the town administrators from Boylston, West Boylston?
Sorry, one more as I'm thinking about it. We only have the one vehicle now. Is there intent to, or need to purchase a second one if there's gonna be what's the part-time person gonna do if the other vehicle's in use?
Yeah, so that's something I think we're still working on in terms of a plan. Right now, the vehicle's not a take-home vehicle as it exists now. Jen does come to the police station and picks up the vehicle. There's some regional opportunities, grant opportunities that are coming up. I think that we'll try to take advantage of those, whether it's to offset cost of staffing or any associated capital equipment as well. But we do have our capital process starting as well, and I think we'll have to consider any associated capital, whether it's vehicles or modifications to the existing kennel as well.
And would that additional purchase be on Rutland's budget, redistributed through the other towns?
So this is all property and property of Rutland, and for example, Jen is an employee of the town of Rutland, so I don't believe the existing IMA has any distribution of capital costs to the member communities. Of course, I think we would look to our partners and see if there's any opportunity to contribute, but again, I think this is a partnership and we'll have those discussions as they come up. But again, I think it's a little premature to say that we may need a new vehicle.
Yeah.
We'll have to assess that as,
We just bought one, I think, 2 years ago.
yeah, it's a lease.
No, I don't mean like a new vehicle, I mean an additional one.
Yeah.
If there's two people and you get multiple calls, you only got one.
As of right now, I think Jen, with the one vehicle, she kind of prioritizes calls and then responds as necessary. I can say obviously with the town of Leicester, when they were a prospective partner, they were actually willing and able to donate their existing animal control vehicle. Obviously that didn't work out, so we were kind of relying on that second vehicle. But we'll take a look and see what we need to provide the best service to all of our partners.
Through the chair. So this part-time person is licensed to go out and pick up animals and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so they'll be required, we've actually already advertised the position, they'll be required to maintain or obtain all of the required licensures. I don't know them at the top of my head, they're on the job postings, but they will be licensed and they'll have an extensive training period with Jen, not only to familiarize themselves with Rutland and our existing communities, but also our new partners as well.
And this person will have all our licenses before she's hired, or he's hired, whoever.
If not upon hiring, required to obtain within a certain time frame. I know, for example, our water department, they have a year to obtain the required licenses, but
But will the town pay for those licenses?
to some
Well, my
extent
point
possibly.
is we're
Yeah.
hiring somebody for this position, so.
We're not gonna pay for the driver's license, for example.
No,
right?
but I mean, all the other animal control licenses.
Yeah.
I don't know what they cost, but they should be in place before we hire this person, I
Yeah.
think.
We'll talk about that. I think that's part of the hiring process, is we wanna have the most qualified people. But again, as you know, this is a tough recruiting environment for every position, so oftentimes communities will kind of absorb the cost to be able to recruit what they think is the best person for the position.
I get a sour taste when we hire people who don't have their qualifications and then we ask them to get them while we're here and we pay for it. I just saying. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I think the regionalization piece is huge. I know we already have regional, but the state and CMRPC are really helpful in pushing that. And so I definitely would continue to explore opportunities for grant funding for whether it's a vehicle or additional staffing or whatever, because I know CMRPC especially is a really good partner with the regionalizing, and the state's really been pushing that. So thank you for coming on and coming to the meeting tonight. And I think some of the qualifications are very, very detailed for the role in the position, and unless we hire someone who maybe is looking to decrease hours or move from an already existing part-time, they're not necessarily qualifications that people will just have automatically in their pockets. So I think in today's hiring marketplace, not just municipal but across the board, finding a good fit and someone who's gonna work well with the organizations and hopefully have a little bit of a long-term plan to stay is as important as having all the qualifications already in place, personally. But I understand that there's a cost to that as well, so.
Can I just to respond a little bit, so I just quickly looking up, so the only special requirements that are required for this position, minimum qualifications, are a valid driver's license, CPR certification, and successful completion of the Mass ACO course. Looking at the Mass ACO course, there's 2 sessions, they're both free.
Makes it easier to swallow.
Carrie, you had something else?
No, that was it.
Is the board comfortable with the IMA as presented? And if so, there is we have a motion here to
I make a motion to accept the proposed intermunicipal agreement between the town of Rutland and the towns of Boylston and West Boylston to provide regional animal control services.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second motion.
Motion and a second, questions, comments, concerns, conversation, roll call, Harry?
Second I.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, thanks to your boards for the conversation and the willingness as well.
Yes, and Madam Chair, through you to your board, we look forward to this partnership and hopefully this is something that we can continue to grow with the town of Rutland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Moving on, we have a lot of boarding committees. I was wondering if we could, go into, if the board is amenable to discussing, the Stormwater Coalition IMA, ratify the IMA with the Central Mass Stormwater Coalition.
I'd like to see that next, yes.
Okay. So, Austin, I believe we are already an existing member of the Stormwater Coalition. I'll let you take the floor from here.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Before you tonight is a request to accept the proposed amendment to the existing intermunicipal agreement to the Central Massachusetts Regional Stormwater Coalition between the town of Rutland and the town of Shrewsbury, and authorizing me to execute the agreement. So the Stormwater Coalition has existed for, I believe, at least 10 or 12 years, and was formed by communities like Rutland, who were seeing these mandates from the federal and state government to be compliant with our MS4 permit. And at the time, there was no stormwater utilities established, especially in Central Mass or really in Massachusetts at all. Public Works departments, engineering departments really didn't know the best way to comply. So all of these communities, which initially included about 10 or 12 communities at the time, joined together in the form of an intermunicipal agreement to share best practices, share services. Rutland in 2020 joined the coalition, and some of the services that are provided include some best practices, technical assistance, leasing of GIS mapping equipment, access to enhanced mapping software services, again, templates, culvert, assessments of our existing infrastructure, a lot of work there. They meet at least quarterly to get together and see what's going on in the stormwater industry. So for example, the most recent annual meeting, they actually discussed what Rutland has done for compliance, especially with our stormwater utility. We've since also received lots of questions and comments from our member communities about how to best be in compliance. The reason why this is before you tonight is the existing fiscal lead. The town of Spencer is no longer able to fulfill the responsibilities of being the fiscal lead, which essentially means taking all the money in. And the town of Shrewsbury has offered to take ownership of that role, so we're just asking for an amendment to the existing agreement between the town of Rutland and the town of Shrewsbury.
Question through the chair. The money that they take in, where does that come from, Austin? That's not our $80 that goes to the town, or is it?
So before the utility was established, it was actually coming out of the Public Works General Fund budget. So there was a stormwater line item, for example, in FY24 was approximately $35,000. So the assessment of approximately $4,000 would go towards our membership and access to all the services and more that I mentioned.
Okay, so now that's being transferred, we still pay the $4,000, but that's being transferred to Shrewsbury now to account for that.
Correct. Yeah, and I apologize, so the assessment for FY25, we'll propose to take out of the Stormwater Utility Enterprise Fund, makes sense. So it'll come out of the approximately $80 some odd for this year.
Okay.
And yes, I think to answer the other part of your question, which Austin did, was that instead of going to Spencer, it will go to Shrewsbury
Right,
now.
right.
And they kind of take the lead on that.
They're still part of the coalition, Spencer?
Yes.
Okay, they're just not stepping up to the plate to take the money.
Correct. I believe there's 30, give or take, communities that are a part of the coalition.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I think this was before a previous board iterations, kind of when we first entered in, and it was kind of the agreement that a lot of the smaller communities are unable to kind of follow every last detail, and so kind of forming a coalition was able to diversify the needs for everybody to know everything and purchase everything and everything. And Austin, I believe we are appointing a Stormwater Advisory Committee member, but who reports to the coalition? Is that generally the town administrator? At
So
least
it's,
until we have a
yeah,
stormwater.
it's typically the appointee of the Stormwater Advisory Committee. So actually that title of that committee should actually be the coalition. I think in years past, it was the Public Works Director. I've been attending the meeting, so whatever the board prefers.
And I would imagine at some point, as we build the utility and staff the utility and everything, that authority
Yeah.
point person might change.
I think so.
Does the board have any other questions or comments or anything about the amendment to the Stormwater Coalition? Would entertain a motion to accept the proposed, I think we have a suggested motion.
I make a motion to accept the proposed amendment of the Central Massachusetts Regional Stormwater Coalition intermunicipal agreement between the town of Rutland and the towns of Shrewsbury, and authorize the town administrator to execute the agreement.
We have a motion, is there a second? A second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin I.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Moving in to, we have a lot of the board and committee members here, so can we take the resignations first and then look to the appointments? Is the board amenable to that? I believe in our packets, we have two resignations. Just as a reminder, the board needs to accept resignations but doesn't really have any authority to deny or question the resignations. We have a resignation of Michael Ferguson from CIPC and Elizabeth Callahan from Economic Development Committee. Is there a motion to accept the resignations of the two individuals?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Paul Deaton.
Motion and second. Any comments, questions, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
I wish Mike Ferguson well. He has been a valued member of CIPC for a while, and his expertise on water and sewer, because he worked for Worcester for 40-some years, was invaluable. So that's the kind of people that we had on the committee, and I'm sorry to see him go, but I'm sure we will move on with, again, experts when we have. So again, kudos over to Mike. Mike, thank you if you're listening.
Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin I.
Whitman, aye, with much appreciation for both of their service, because I think they've stepped up and done a lot, so thank you both. Moving into appointments, we had held these from last meeting because we wanted to look at the board and commission charges, and we had invited the chairs and potential appointees to attend if possible. I realize that it's not possible for everyone. I received from a couple of people that they might not be able to make it. They weren't sure based on timing and everything. We do have Zoom as well. So we have a list presented before us, and I believe we have had, we have the letters of interest as well as the chair recommendations provided to us as well. I think the best option is to go through kind of by board and commission. We have the charges if anyone, has any questions or wants to have a conversation about that, as well as who is being appointed for how long, and whether they're full or alternate members, or what the appointee is. I believe for town council, the recommendation is to currently continue with KP Law. Is that, Austin, Tamika, that's the current recommendation. I think there's been a little bit of frustration kind of with some responsiveness and everything, so I appreciate the work that our office has continued to do with that to try to keep it moving forward. Thank you. Is there a motion to appoint KP as town council?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Comments?
Sure.
I have had not some good dealings with KP Law in the past, and I would have liked to have seen another alternative that we had a choice to pick on that. And if we do, I hope that their responsiveness is a lot better than it's been in the past, particularly to members of the board.
Go ahead.
I'm sure we can have a discussion. Probably the best session is executive session to talk about those comments. I think KP is a respected firm in the municipal law space. Obviously, there's some other options out there. I don't think we were given any direction by the board to consider any alternatives. I would be happy to. There's some very good law firms, local, not so local, that I think could apply to, I think, maybe what the board is looking for. But again, without any direction or specific comments, this is the recommendation. I have some ideas, but again, I think those conversations are best suited for executive session.
Question, if we authorize KP Law tonight, are we under contract for a year that we can't do anything?
No.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
Well, can I ask one question? Austin, if, what's the point of this then? Just, what's the point of the appointment if it doesn't really mean anything?
If we have a legal issue tomorrow, we need someone under the board's appointment to call, to be honest.
Fair enough, yeah, I wasn't sure,
And we
so
do have
that's why I'm asking.
some outstanding work with KP at this time, so we need to be able to continue that relationship.
Okay.
Motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Matt's and I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. For AgCom, we have the appointment of Robert Soderberg as a full member for a 3-year term, Dick Williams as an alternate member for a 1-year term, and there's still a vacancy as a 1-year term. As the board probably remembers, the AgCom is one that has had has the alternate member option set forth in MGL and bylaws.
Mr. Williams is here, I don't know Mr. Soderberg, is he here? No?
Still on vacation.
Glenn, are you chair of AgCom? So Glenn's chair of AgCom, if there's questions.
Who is it?
Glenn.
Oh, okay. Could you just give me a real quick idea of what this commission does, what it's responsible for?
Well, our last issue was a rooster complaint,
Was it what? A rooster
Rooster.
complaint?
but no, we've been working with trying to come up with a checklist for 61A properties as they come up and prioritize them, recommending whether the town should exercise their option. We've also sponsored the article for the Community Preservation Act, which we're continuing to work on for the November election. We work with the Glenwood School in constructing a greenhouse at Norfolk Agricultural Academy. Vocational school. And we're hopeful that'll be ready for fall. And we'll be talking about bringing that out to the Glenwood School for use in the agricultural studies or promotion of agriculture.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Question through the chair?
Yeah.
Glenn, I'm reading a lot of stuff here, it refers to Mass General Law and the things that you do, activities. But if you could summarize what your mission statement is for the Ag Committee, how would you summarize that? What's its mission statement?
I think our mission is to promote agricultural practices and principles for the community, and try to develop local agriculture and preservation of, agricultural land and properties and businesses.
I don't mean to put you on the hot seat, okay, that wasn't the
No.
reason for my question. My question was that when somebody looks at this, it talks a lot about things, but it doesn't say, I'll give you an example of what I mean by a mission statement. NASA was tasked with what? Putting a man on the moon. Everything else is details. What's the mission statement of agriculture? And if I may, allow me to, it just says, it outlines being the Ag Committee and Mass General Law outlines the types of activities legally allowed and necessary for farm operations. Do you oversee that? Do you get into enforcing that kind of stuff? You bring it to somebody?
Well, we don't really enforce anything. We report to the Board of Selectmen with
So I just wanna, if I may, I just wanna be mindful that we asked, definitely wanted to have a board conversation, but not necessarily go through every charge mission statement right here tonight. Get a better understanding as to what we understand the work of the committees and what the committee understands the work of their work to be, and not get into the creating mission statements or picking apart charges or anything. We know a lot of the charges and or mission statements need some updating, but my intent for tonight was not to do that work also. It was to have a better understanding of the work that the boards or committees do, so that we can ensure that we're appointing people who are aware of the work that is being done, as well as that the committee is kind of understanding where the board is coming from as well, and not kind of.
So you don't want me to pursue this line? The chair is asking me not to ask these questions.
I'm not asking you not to ask the questions, I'm just
I'm
saying that my
trying to get a
intent.
clarity on what the Agricultural Commission's responsibilities are in terms of its mission statement. Maybe Austin can answer that for me?
Yeah.
Because I just wanna say, if we're appointing people, they understand, yes, there's activities they perform, but what is the mission statement of agriculture?
So I'll give you one sentence right on the Town of Rutland website.
Okay.
As a commission, we strive to increase public awareness of local agriculture and the positive impact it has on our town. As you know, the Ag Commission was formed in 2006 along with the Right to Farm bylaw. They actually have a role within the bylaw itself. Glenn mentioned a recent dispute between neighbors regarding livestock or fowl. In the bylaw, they are actually the mediator of that dispute.
Okay.
It's reported to the zoning enforcement officer or the Board of Health, and it's the responsibility of the AgCom to be the mediator of that dispute. So they do have some sort of a role and not just increasing awareness. But again, they also enhance the agricultural image as a right to farm community. So you go to Naquag Elementary School, the greenhouse, you mentioned the initiative for Glenwood, so they do a lot of also advocacy for the right to farm and the agricultural community in the town of Rutland.
Again, I'm looking and I'm saying, Mr. Soderberg, is he aware that that is what ag does? That's their mission statement.
He's a current member.
He's a current member?
I was gonna say,
He's
I
an
believe
alternate
he's an
member.
alternate member and he's
And I know
been,
Mr. Williams has been a current member for a while. Okay,
Just a little while.
thank you. I appreciate the chair's indulgence, thank you.
is there a motion to appoint Mr. Soderberg and Mr. Williams as presented? Is there a second?
Second motion.
Motion and a second, questions, conversation, concerns?
No.
Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
That's
Ledger, aye. Whitman, aye.
Galvin, aye for Mr. Williams, cause he's here. Mr. Soderberg, I don't even know him, so I'm gonna go nay, just cause I've never even met the man.
Okay,
Sure, he's a terrific guy, but I've never even met the guy, I
think
can't.
okay,
I'm just wondering if we have to separate the
I was gonna say,
motions
do
and
we
if we're doing roll
separate?
call.
yeah.
We have
Yeah,
to
I mean,
separate them.
I just, I can't vote for people I've never even met.
So do we
I
wanna
thought we were gonna,
do
ask
Dick
people.
on the first? Do we wanna change this one to just Dick and then we'll go through and do Bob separately?
Sure.
So we have just so I have an accurate
Yeah.
roll call vote for each.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who made the motion? I think I asked for a motion, so we'll separate out. So motion for Mr. Williams for an alternate one-year member. Is whoever made the motion amenable to that and
We
that
had
second?
Jen and then Paul seconded.
And then that's roll call for Mr. Williams. Harry.
Second, aye?
That's an aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. And then a motion for Mr. Soderberg for a full member, 3-year term. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to appoint Robert Soderberg for the next 3-year term, 2027, to the Agricultural Committee.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Second, aye?
That's an aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, nay.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. For Cable Advisory Committee, we have 2 full member for 3-year terms, Paul Mattson and James Kelly. The Cable Advisory Committee, has quite the in-depth charge as we had seen previously. And they are a 5-member board.
Is Mr. Kelly here?
If I may, through the chair?
Yep.
Paul, you're on the Cable Advisory. Can you tell, who's James Kelly? Is he here? I don't see him.
No, he's not here. He is at home right now, and he is one who uses Zoom to attend the meetings.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to, can you tell us what his position is on the Cable Committee?
Yeah, he has been one of the people who understands contract and this sort of thing, and so has been working towards getting another contract along with me and the rest of the committee, which at this point in time is making as much progress as a snail eating its way through a cement wall. But at any rate, we will just keep moving forward, and I am working with Department of Telecommunications and Energy, and they are trying to get into Spectrum and get some answers out of them, which are not really making too much progress at this point in time.
If I may. Austin, is this a paid position? Is this a paid position for James Kelly?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Does the board want to separate out all the appointments? So we can do Mr. Mattson and then we can do Mr. Kelly? Okay, is there any other conversation? Otherwise,
I make a motion to approve, to appoint Paul Mattson to the Cable Advisory Committee as a full member, 3-year term to expire on 2027.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Conversation, roll call.
Second, I.
I'll recuse myself.
Ledger I.
Galvin I.
Whitman, aye. For Mr. Kelly, I believe he's an existing member on the committee. He's not on Zoom either, not on Zoom, not here. Again, we had asked, it wasn't a requirement that members or people attend. Is there a motion?
How long has he served on the cable committee, if I may? I'm sorry, I don't mean to.
I'm sorry,
How long has he served on the cable committee?
Jim?
Yeah,
This would be his third term.
okay. I know we didn't ask full members to be here. I'll make a motion that we appoint James Kelly as a full member for a 3-year term expiring 2027.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second for conversation, or anyone have any conversation?
No,
Roll call, Harry.
second, I.
I'll recuse myself.
Ledger I.
Galvin nay.
Whitman, aye. Moving into Capital Improvement Planning Committee, I believe with the acceptance of the resignation tonight, there are 3 openings. I have to say for this particular one, I'm a little frustrated with the process, that members weren't encouraged, or interested parties weren't encouraged to submit applications or letters of interest to the office as an entirety. So we're not really, there's concern that we're not necessarily being presented with all of the applicants who were interested, and just the individuals that the chair, maybe the committee, I'm not sure, have appointed or have decided to put forth. I think this board has been very clear last year as well as this year, is trying to receive as much interest as possible and give us the opportunity, as we have just done with the previous ones, to have conversation with individuals who are in attendance, as well as understanding that just because a chair recommendation is there doesn't necessarily always mean that that's the direction that the board wants to go. And I think we've experienced that just in the past couple votes. So my I
Through the
think,
chair first.
sure,
I'd like some clarification on these we don't get, or who's being thrown around, that my process wasn't complete. Who sat there, who was involved, that understands my process and says it wasn't complete? I need to know, not just bantering around here. We are dealing with very important people in a very important committee.
I think,
And just so you know, I think I did an extensive research on talking with people, asking people. I met with people for coffee about it. And I do believe I picked the most qualified for the future going forward at this point. So please tell me where I haven't done my job.
my personal concern is that anytime that I meet with anyone looking for interest in becoming involved in town, I am willing to spend time with them. I connect them with individuals on the board or committee that they're interested in, or put them in touch with different people. I always ask them to please submit a letter of interest through our office so that it comes before us as an entire board, regardless of who's on the board, so that even if they are not necessarily selected for that position at that time, that opening at that time, that they become in our pool of potential volunteers and resources and everything, in trying to elicit new interest. And I appreciate all the work that you've done, Harry, to garner new interest in.
Tell me whose application I didn't get. Tell me whose application I didn't look at.
It's not a question of whose you didn't get, it's a matter of who has this board not seen as far as their interest for the board's consideration versus a
I thought
singular.
this was a committee assignment like everybody else. The chair submitted, so I am really confused here.
It
that
should
we're
go
picking
through the
this one.
office. It should go through the office, any
went through the
interested
office.
party.
If I may, in the past, any interested party has submitted a letter of interest and application to the office. And then it goes to the committee for a chair recommendation, and the committee discusses and the chair provides a recommendation. It's then, all of that information is provided to this board for consideration. There have been instances where not this particular board, but the select board has made appointments that have gone against the chair recommendation, has gone against what the committee recommendation might have been, because it was a direction that the board wanted to see and not the committee. And I think that there's a lot of value to having a larger conversation as far as the direction of the boards and committees and the parties who are interested. We've talked about how to make it friendlier for individuals to feel that they have an opportunity to apply and then make connections through the office. If I'm speaking to anyone, I try to connect them with individuals on the existing boards or committees. But that's really what the office is there for, is making those connections and providing the information to the chairs and other members of the boards and committees. I thought we had communicated that previously, just the previous board as well as this board, kind of the understanding of the process, and that has been in existence for.
So tell me what part of the process CIPC did not do that prevents you from making a decision tonight on those three people? Tell me.
Well, you said that you met with a lot of people who were
I
very
met with
interested.
people, and I got applications. I got their phone numbers. I know who to talk to.
But the
So
board,
I got that from the Tamika. The only one is the one I just submitted. But please understand, and I don't know where you're coming from. Please understand, Michael Ferguson, I had no idea when he was going to step down. So that limited me in my ability and rush to meet people. So therefore, if I don't know when he's stepping down, I'm not gonna impose a time and effort on a citizen of this town who wants to sit on a committee until I'm sure. So tell me, in the process again, you're talking about you. I want you to clarify where the chair of the CIPC, me, didn't do his due diligence in picking somebody for this committee. Tell me.
did the whole committee weigh in on these individuals?
No, the committee's not required to weigh in. They can meet and talk, but they're not required.
I
There is
believe.
no requirement in that bylaw, in that statement, no.
I believe in our policy, it is that it's a chair recommendation after consideration
Well,
by
we
the
know how you
committee.
feel about policy, that can change.
A policy can change, Harry, and my concern is that there were people who may have been interested that didn't understand because they met with the chair of a committee that didn't follow the process. We're asking all of our other, we just put a chair on the hot seat tonight, it's starting this. And we're asking them to follow the same process that now suddenly we don't need to follow for this. I'm not saying that these individuals aren't qualified or authorized or anything. My concern is the process, and
So if any of these people, as we go through, missed one item in the process, we're not gonna make it on, we're not gonna decide on, correct?
My concern is that there are other people interested in being on the CIPC who are not on this list, who this board does not have the opportunity to talk to and find out what their qualifications are.
Please tell me their names.
I don't know, it hasn't been shared with this board.
Well, what are you talking about? If you don't know who these people are, then you're just throwing stuff around.
Who did you interview outside of these three people?
I interviewed a gentleman from Cherland Drive who I met with at Brilla.
Okay,
I interviewed with Mike, who I met with. I interviewed or talked to the gentleman who ran for the school committee. He was interested. I talked to him, and I talked to Susan.
so where are all of their letters of interest for us to
Well, you
consider?
know what? I talked to them, and some of them said, no, I don't wanna be on CIPC, I might wanna be on another committee.
Okay,
So, again, where are we going with this? This sounds like a witch hunt to me. So I don't understand what you're doing here. Please help me, because I thought I worked very hard to pick a very good person and keep 2 people on my committee. And we're in front of the town, so you need to explain to the town why you don't wanna reappoint these people and appoint somebody new. I don't get it. Tamika, have I asked you for information on people when I call? Can you give me phone numbers and stuff?
So you had asked me about one of the individuals.
Yeah.
And he had been communicating with us via email, so you had his contact information.
And has anybody else applied to you?
No, I've not received anything.
Okay then. So if we don't know these people because they've not applied, then how can I put them on the sheet here? How can we talk to them? Because they've not applied. They've not been
But
interested.
I think, and correct,
Ugh, frustrating.
Leah, if I may just add, so in my initial email that I sent out, I think it was May 13th, to all the boards and commissions, I outlined the process, and one of the steps was that we asked that all appointments be brought before the boards and committees so that each board and committee could come to a consensus and make a recommendation. Although the letter comes from the chair, you'll see most of those letters in your packet state that the board voted unanimously or a certain vote to appoint these people that were recommended. So that was something that was expressed and was followed by all of the other board and committees that I had, because some of it was timing of, you know, they weren't necessarily gonna meet before you guys met on June 24th, thankfully it was pushed out. So that's why the list that I provided had all those boxes checked, that they had gotten it. I received Terry's email on July 3rd, which was after I had sent out the packet, so I included that information today. Your email referenced 3 people. I didn't have letters of interest for 3 people that you had interviewed, so I provided the board with what I had received.
Right, because maybe I should have had them call you personally and say, I'm not interested in being on this. See, even though I talked with somebody, I'm not interested. My point I'm getting to here is, are you making it so difficult that people now don't want to be on a committee? Because now they can't take the chair, we can't trust that the chair's information is gonna be correct. I mean, we set out here to make it easy for people to get on committees. We want to oversee the committees, but we set out to make it easy. All of a sudden, we're making it so difficult. Maybe people don't want to sit on committees now. I don't understand.
I certainly respect the comments, Madam Chair, of all members. I guess my only question would be, what about the process for interested individuals who I think went through that process? I think we have a gentleman tonight who has been very interested in this particular commission. Submitted as requested letter of interest to the board and to our office, attended a meeting, had a meeting with yourself. They may be asking, why not me? Versus recommendations, and it could be not just CIPC, but any other due process that may be owed to them for putting their name out there, attending a meeting, and not getting the at least some sort of an explanation why they weren't selected to be recommended to be appointed.
If you can show me a person that didn't get an explanation why they weren't selected, please let me know.
Mike, did you get an explanation?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was that, but that wasn't related?
Due process.
But that wasn't related to your fellow board members?
No.
That's what we're saying is missing, Harry. That should be
No.
part of what comes to the board for consideration.
And with all due respect, Harry, everyone, all 3 of you, or 2 out of the 3 of you recommended candidates for this submitted a letter as requested during this process. As chair of the CIPC, I think you were expected by your appointing authority to follow that process.
I did. Show me
Again,
where I didn't submit a letter, where they didn't submit a letter and I didn't submit a letter.
the rest of the board did not see this candidate's credentials until today. Until today.
Well, you didn't see the credentials recently of the other 2 board members that are up for reelect.
Yes, they did. They
No,
were included in the packet.
They included a letter saying, I'd like to be on the board
And
again.
they're existing members that were reappointed.
So I guess, what I'm hearing here is that we are going to be very, very strict when we go through all these appointments now. If there's a box that isn't checked, we're not gonna approve the individual. Is that what we are saying?
Well,
Can I- I
Ken,
don't
with all
think-
due respect, yes.
Okay.
Because especially this appointment process, especially in the new bylaw that was just recently approved, a lot of this process was based off of your comments about appointing to boards and commissions. So I think if we want to stray from policy, that's one thing, but if we want to stray from bylaws, especially ones that were just recently approved by the electorate, that's another thing.
Well, we're not talking about bylaws here. We're talking about,
There's a bylaw for appointed committees, which is the
Appointed-
responsibility of the board.
right, but in that, it does not specify exactly all the steps we're talking about here. That's policy.
Correct. Which, again, respectfully, was not followed.
Correct. Okay. So, what is it we are going to do for the rest of the evening now?
If I may, everybody that's on that list has appropriately followed the process. Otherwise, I would not have brought it before the board. And, you know, I will say that the last 2 months, I think these guys are probably very sick of hearing from me because I've sent out a lot of friendly reminders and follow-ups and keeping lists and checklists and spreadsheets and trying to make sure that I had everything that has been policy with the board so that I only brought a finished product in front of you. So my only concern is that we are equitable to everybody so that the process continues to be transparent.
And I think for me, my understanding, and maybe my understanding is wholly different. My understanding was interested parties submit an application to the office and at the same time maybe having conversations. And then it's a mutual decision that then the interested party says, yes, I am interested, please continue, or actually, no, I'm not, and kind of withdraw that way. Versus an interested party meeting one-on-one with someone, whether it's me as chair of select board or whomever chair, Glenn chair of AgCom or whomever, and having it funneled that way to decide, well, you're actually not a good fit for a good person for this committee or whatever. I think we want the boards and committees to be able to have a pool of people to understand, so it goes to the committee level first for consideration, discussion, kind of weighing, what their preference is and everything, as well as at the board level to decide that this is the recommendation of the board, these are the pool of applicants that we have, and is this the vision of the board or committee the same as the vision of the select board? And is that going to mesh or not? And so rather than only having presented to us an individual or the individuals that the chair alone and not even an entire committee feel comfortable with or whatever.
So Leah, if I may, usually our office is the first point of contact for somebody that's interested in serving on a board or commission. So usually what I do is when they reach out, I email them back, I introduce myself, and I encourage them to attend a meeting of that committee so that they can get a feel for how things work, they can meet the members, vice versa. I give them the meeting schedule. And that has happened with the folks that are on your list, for people that are new, which I did make sure to parenthesize that they were new members, so you would know. I hope Brian doesn't mind, but Brian Bjorklund is a great example. He's attended the last several Conservation Commission meetings, and Tim Keenan did the same before he was appointed a few months ago. So kind of echoing what Tom has said many times before, we want to see these people showing up and introducing themselves and going to these meetings before we appoint them. So I always try to be that first line to say, here's your first step, so then they can get the consensus of the committee. So when I'm bringing it to you, you know that they've kind of taken those initial steps before it comes to you.
So let me ask you, so is the chair saying that a chairman of a committee should not go out and do search and look for people that they think are qualified for that committee?
I'm not saying that at all.
Because that was the process I worked under, that's why I'm asking.
If I may, Mike, to put you on the spot, you submitted your interest in serving on the CAPC?
That's one of different committees, and I'm glad I could say something. I believe the process was done totally correct. I expressed the first interest actually with Austin went to Tamika, emails came to me. They requested on the committees that I'm a part of, and my name's on a couple different ones, included Harry, Council of Aging and Economic. I met with Harry, I went to one of their meetings. Harry and I have spoken 2 or 3 times. I'm confident what he said, not left out in the future by any means. I've talked with the town planner on the EDC. So all this information came to me and I did put a letter of intent. So it allowed me to decide whether or not I was a fit personally. And if I didn't feel comfortable with that, then I wouldn't do it. So I think the process is handled right and it comes then to you. But I do believe it has to go through those committees and I think whoever applies should go to either the chair or someone in charge of those committees. And if they can, sit if possible, but at least spend the time. But Harry and I talked for hours, John and I talked, the town planner, probably a good hour on the phone. So where I didn't know, I was confident. And I am confident, and I'm confident in all the information going forward.
So having all those conversations, what was your, learning about what the CIPC was and all these other boards, what was your level of interest after all the conversations? Did you want to continue and be seated
Yes.
on the CIPC?
Oh, yes, it's increased.
Okay,
All of it, all my interest has increased.
Okay.
I believe in doing homework too. I mean, even before this, I looked into these meetings after I retired. I don't jump into anything, I research. And I learned about the committees even before I even went, to the office and talked to Austin and stuff. I looked at it and I had questions. And that's how I got on with the EDC because I saw something and I said, wait a minute, and I looked, and after discussion, I said, okay. Because I want to make sure also that I could be a benefit for the town of Rutland. Not just for myself, because it's not about me, it's about the town.
Right.
And I am confident. And if I don't make something right now, I'm not going away.
right.
All
So-
right? I'm gonna be here.
Just for confirmation, you do still have interest in serving on the CIPC?
Absolutely.
So this is where my concern comes in, is why don't we have any of his letter of interest or information to review as far as the appointments?
Why don't we, Tamika?
His letter was not in there because I was told that you had chosen somebody else.
Correct.
But that's
We
what
do
we're,
that.
that's what we're saying, is you can provide a letter of recommendation for your selection based on the research that you are, whatever you would like to do as far as researching potential appointees. But anybody that's still interested after conversing, if there's multiple people for less seats than are available, all of those people that have continued interest,
Okay.
they should be brought before the board for all of us to review.
So where is that in the policy? Where is that in the policy? There isn't. So I'm following policy, and that's not in the policy. My policy is I make a recommendation to the board of who I want to sit on the committee.
Okay.
I'm not making 12 recommendations to you. That's not what you're asking the chair to do.
We're not asking you for
Yes, you are.
recommendations. You can make a
Because
singular.
if the information's not here, that's not my problem.
If I may, but we don't have any of it because you instructed Tamika not to send it.
I did not instruct Tamika not to send it. I did not. And I don't wanna put Tamika in the hot seat here. We had a process. I sent the information to her and I said to her, if you could please get this scheduled on the next available appointment schedule. I
But
didn't say don't include it,
Did you provide, I have multiple
I didn't say
people
do not.
interested?
No, that's not my job to provide multiple people. That's Tamika, that's her job then as secretary, not mine. My job is to make a recommendation on all the information I saw and had accessible. And based on where this town is going, and based on where we are with all the issues we have coming up, I make a good decision.
Listen, for 1 minute, please. It's not any one individual's person to decide where this town is going. We are a 5-member board that need to govern as a 5-member board. And I think that is some of the concern, not specifically with this, but in trying to generate the policy for which the boards and committees were done. Austin, I know you,
Just with all due respect, I think just in the interest of time and everyone else's
Point of order, please.
tonight, and maybe if the board respectfully wants to just hold on this one for discussion at the end of this topic and go through the 8 other boards and commissions for appointments so we can send everyone home. Unless you guys wanna stay, this is really good entertainment.
Thank you, Austin.
so we'll hold CIPC and go on to Conservation Commission. Conservation Commission, we have 2 for full members for 3-year terms, Brian Bajorklin and Timothy Keenan. Brian Bajorklin is new and Timothy was appointed to fill a resignation and has served on the commission for a couple months, I believe.
And if I may, they're both on Zoom tonight.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Tim. Is there conversation, questions, concerns? We can, as we've done with the rest, we can separate them out individually if that's the board's preference.
I am not seeing Brian's information here,
What do you mean, his information?
his letter of intent and all the other stuff.
It was included in the packet. So I stated in my email on Thursday that in an
Okay.
effort to save paper, I was not going to print them for this evening because it would have been like
Okay,
a lot of pages. So it's in the electronic packet and it's on the SharePoint. There was also a letter of recommendation of the unanimous vote of the Conservation Commission to appoint both of these gentlemen.
okay. And were there other people interested?
No.
Nobody else did, and nobody gave you an application?
Correct.
Okay, so we couldn't see anybody that hasn't filled an application out, correct?
So Tim is an existing serving member and he expressed his interest. Brian is a brand new member. He wrote a letter and expressed his interest. We did not receive any other letters of interest, so I've submitted everything that we received. The commission reviewed it at a meeting and then formed a letter stating the board's unanimous consent.
What did, I probably could look it up on my phone. What did Brian say as his letter of intent? Why was he interested in the Conservation Commission?
Well, that's probably a fair question to ask him.
Brian's on. Brian, would you like to speak? I don't know if you heard.
Oh yeah, I'm hearing everything.
So,
So,
go ahead.
yep, so I'm a 20-year wildlife biologist with the Conservation and Wildlife Health and Disease, and we moved to this town 7 or 8 years ago. And I'm just interested in trying to preserve that small town feel, making sure that the town enacts their responsibility for the Watershed Protection Act, and just protect what we have, the sensitive wetlands and water bodies that we have in this town.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you for being available tonight, Brian.
Yes.
Of course.
Tim too.
So motions? Or additional conversation?
Make a motion to, was it reappoint? A new appoint,
Just
right?
appoint, just appoint.
Appoint to the Conservation Committee, Brian, I apologize, Brian, if I mispronounce your name, Bjorklund, Bjork? How do you pronounce it?
Tamika hit it right on the head. Bjork.
What was it?
Bjorklund.
Bjorklund.
And Timothy Keenan to full members, 3-year terms, both expiring in 2027.
So we'll do this as a joint since they're both on and provided all the documentation. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is the board comfortable with the joint motion? Roll call, Harry?
Aye.
That's in it.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Moving on to Earthworks Board, this is a board that was established, and its members, representative members from various existing boards and commissions. The select board appoints those members, as the individual committees put forth a member, recommendation. So I believe we have Glenn Coppola as a full member for a 3-year term, coming from AgCom, right? Questions, comments, concerns? Or a motion?
Make a motion to approve Glenn Coppola to the Earthworks Board as a full member, 3-year term expiring in 2027.
Second.
Questions, comments,
Thank
concerns?
you for coming.
Roll call, Harry.
Second, I,
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Glenn, thanks for serving on multiple boards. Appreciate it.
For the 4th of July committee, these are 1-year terms. The 4th of July is always 1-year appointment terms. We have John Fitzgerald, Ben Barakian, Colin Spencer, and Amy Ponnenville. Everyone has attended meetings and has either participated or was involved in this past year's 4th of July. I don't know that anyone's here for them.
They do an amazing job, all these guys.
They're coming off of the high of the past week. So questions, comments, concerns, or motions?
Make a motion to approve John Fitzgerald, Ben Barakian, Colin Spencer, Amy Palmerville to the 4th of July committee as full members, 1-year terms expiring 2025.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Questions, conversation, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
Second, I,
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Zoning Board of Appeals, this is one that the board appoints and is probably one of the most heated boards and committees that we have, so thank you for your service. We have Chris Senical as a full member for 3-year term, and Elliot, I'm never going to pronounce.
NATO.
Thank you, as an alternate member for a 1-year term. I know you guys have been busy the past few years, so thank you.
It comes and goes. Not too bad.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, motions?
Elliot's not here, right?
He is not.
You're
has he been a
comfortable with
member
him?
before?
He has.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been a member for a short time now.
Yeah, a couple of years now.
He's been on the Board of Health, and personally, I'm the chairman, Chris Senical, and I've known Butch for a long time. We actually grew up in the same neighborhood in Shrewsbury together. But Butch and I have volunteered doing a ton of things, building sheds for the baseball guys. He's just always willing to help out, and he's got a great construction background, which is something the board really needed to have. We had 3 lawyers. One did leave, Rick Surratt, and so, and then we lost another gentleman. And I was the only one with construction. We have a banker, 2 lawyers, which is great to have the lawyers. You need that as part of what we do. But we just needed more construction because I was the only one. I've been on for 20 years, and I've been the only one really with that background. So we really needed to strengthen that. So he's been great, a key asset to the board, and a great guy, very reasonable, which is, I think, a key asset to zoning board of appeals situations.
So you've been on this board 20 years?
Right around there, yeah. 04, 05, I kind of lost track, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, or motion?
Make a motion to approve Christopher Senical and Elliot Nadeau,
As presented.
as presented, 1 full member, Mr. Senical is a full member, Mr. Nadeau as an alternate member. Mr. Senical for a 3-year term expiring in 2027. Mr. Nadeau, 1-year term expiring 2025 to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second. Motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, I,
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And I would just like to say that Tamika's really the brains behind the zoning board. She does all the work. She's awesome. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
take care.
Council on Aging, we have three full members for 3-year terms, 2 of which are new faces, which is great. We have Patricia Latino Martin, Ben Barakian, and Peg Sullivan. This is, I think Ben is not here, but Peg and Pat are, correct?
Hello, where's Pat?
She's sitting beside Mike.
Oh.
And Peg is on the other side of Mike's sandwich.
Hello.
thank you, and questions, comments, concerns, motions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Pat, welcome. Thank you for joining the council. When was the last time you attended one of their meetings?
The COA meeting
Yeah,
last month.
last month they had one?
They had a meeting, but there was not enough people to have a meeting. There
Okay,
was no quorum,
okay,
so I sat and talked to them for about an hour. Who was ever there?
thank you.
You're welcome.
You were probably the same thing, Peg? You were there? Yeah. Yeah. I know they've been troubled for a while. Thank you. Okay.
Motion and a second. There was a motion and a second, right, or not
No.
yet?
Oh, no, I
Okay.
don't think we did
No.
this thing yet, no.
I make a motion to approve Patricia Latino Martin, Benjamin Barkian, and Peg Sullivan as full members, 3-year term expiration 2027 to the Council on Aging.
Second motion.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion, roll call, Harry?
Second, aye?
That's an aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you, and thank you, because I know, to Harry's point, that COA has been struggling to get quorum consistently, so thank you for stepping up and filling in.
Right.
Thank you. Economic Development Commission, we have Mr. Jordan, who would be a reappointment for 3 years. He had reached out and said he wasn't sure he'd be able to make it, stuff had come up.
We all know Randy.
And then Mr. Michael,
Go ahead, give it a shot.
Devarkis, close, so close.
Well, if you try to say it Lithuanian, you'll never do it. Donetskis, but Devarikis is fine.
Thank you. Both for 3-year full member terms to expire in 2027. And we've heard a little bit from Mike already. Glad to kind of see you landed in EDC. But, you know, I understand that you had interest kind of in a few different spots, so.
They'll all come in time. I'm not concerned. I'm here.
I make a motion to approve Randy Jordan and Michael Devarikis.
Got it.
See? Both for 3-year terms expiring in 2027 to the Economic Development Commission.
Second motion.
We have a motion and a second. I just wanted to make a comment that between this and in a couple, we have RDIC also. I believe there's a scheduled joint economic development and RDIC meeting with town staff as well. Later this month, the end of the month, to we're still trying to pull together the fine-tune piece of those two commissions' roles and responsibilities. So that is on the future for the select board's awareness that there's concerted effort on the staff to pull those together as well, so
That's true, July 24th.
like 24th, yeah, thank you. And I believe John Charbonneau and Austin, you both will be there, my town planner. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments, concerns? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
That's an aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye.
Before we continue,
Yeah.
the historical commission, I'm being a seated member, I'm gonna step down and recuse myself from any conversation
Okay.
or voting.
We have the historical commission, Lynn Turcott, and we have 2 3-year full-term members, Lynn Turcott and Michelle Van Reet. Michelle Van Reet is a new member. Both, I believe, have submitted applications and interest and have met with historical commission and with Peter, I believe, so. I know that a couple of these are having quorum issues. I think EDC was one as well, and I think historical commission is struggling with quorum issues, so I'm thankful to see a new face and renewed interest as well, so thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Motion.
Make a motion to approve Lynn Turcott and Michelle Van Reet as full members, 3-year term expiring in 2027 for the Historical Commission.
The motion, is there a second?
Second motion.
Motion and second, questions, comments, concerns, roll call, Harry,
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. Thank you. Moving into the Rutland Development and Industrial Commission, RDIC, we have one full member for a 5-year term, which would expire in 2029. I know there had been conversation previously as far as the term limits, that's set by MGL, I believe. That was adopted, I believe the information I'm working on getting from the town clerk, just to understand it all, the differentiations is in the 60s, I believe, that was adopted, so, or accepted at town meeting. So we have Mr. Mike Sullivan, existing member.
Rutland on both public and private land.
And this was developed, you said when, in the 60s?
So
1965.
1965? Do you think that's still needed,
Do I think,
the IDIC? I mean, you know, the one thing that brought me to the select board is I feel like this town has a lot of things I've said in the past that kind of work against each other. And I think, in my opinion, it's prevented some growth in this town. And I'm just curious as to, the town was a very different place in the 60s or 70s, you know.
well, that was just the establishment of the commission back in the 60s.
So if a business comes in and says they want a piece of property that the town owns,
Correct?
the town administrator says it's a good job, brings it to us, we're interested. We bring it to the town, town's interested, we still have to go through you in order to get to the town, right?
Well, that's an interesting question. Typically what happens is, if the inquiry comes to the town, to their office, it typically gets referred to us. We then have pursued those opportunities with those individuals and made whatever recommendations we can to facilitate that through, back through the town administrator's office.
Right, but the way it's set up, it's more than a recommendation, you have say in who develops a piece of land.
Ultimately, if it's town property,
At least that's what I wanna see happen, regardless of who's on this board. And I just see that as being maybe an extra step that, you know, the town isn't the same way it was in the 60s or 70s, and we have capable people in positions. I don't know that I'm confident that it's needed. That's my only point.
well, how would you propose it work?
You go through the town administrator, the select board, and then the town.
I mean, that's,
select boards are elected, and the town administrator is obviously the chief executive officer. So to me, it's just an extra step. No one's ever been able to convince me that it's necessary. Years ago, maybe it was.
well, I mean, just by way of example, you would not have a cell tower on Route 68 that's generated, I don't even know now, $350,000 worth of revenue to the town if it weren't for the RDIC. So, is it worth it?
And I'm not knocking what you've done. I'm just saying, is it a necessary entity moving forward? I don't know.
I don't know, you tell me would you have had that opportunity without us? I don't think so.
Maybe we would have had more. I don't know. That you're talking about, what if? I don't know.
I think some of this is town in 65 adopted the statute that allows that created and
Right.
established the RDIC, and we know the Heights property stuff references RDIC's involvement in that as well. So I think in and this is a little bit with economic development and RDIC combined, is understanding now that we have a town planner and a town administrator, we have staff, how these two boards and committees, and I know that this was a consideration and conversation when EDC was established a few years ago. And so that's what I'm hopeful that the meeting, the end of this month, can start kind of bridging that gap, and so that it's a more concerted effort and understanding. I'd asked the town clerk to provide the information so I can understand the history of town meeting votes that established the RDIC, Rutland Heights, the purchase of Rutland Heights and everything, and how that's laid out. Not as a this or that, but so that I can better understand per town meeting where things go.
But the RDIC was never established just to work on Rutland Heights.
Right, no, that's what I understand that the RDIC was established in the 60s and the Heights wasn't purchased until early 2000s, right? And I think, I mean, for me personally, and I'll say this, me personally, from a Heights, I'm gonna say for the Heights perspective alone, I know there's a Heights master plan that was developed shortly after the purchase or during the purchase. Now that the bill is paid off essentially, which has been great work with the RDIC to get that to where it's been. I've had the conversations, I think, as far as putting out some more public information sessions to gather where the town might want what to happen with the remaining property. We know what the master plan for the Heights property says. Town's changed a lot in the 20-some years since that was approved, and now that it's essentially paid off with the sale, is there value to having a more concerted conversation for that specific property? That's where I'm coming from, but again, that's also that delineation of is RDIC, I think a few years ago, it was kind of the RDIC was only the Heights property and that was it. Now going back, and I'm still waiting for the town meeting stuff, but to understand when RDIC was created in 65, what that was and how that looks now, given that there's professional staff, and I say that that there's professional staff in Rutland, but it's across the Commonwealth,
But we know that Rutland Heights didn't even exist back then.
Right.
But I mean, to me, to Selectman Galvin's point, if you're interested in streamlining, you ought to look at the fact that we have two boards that, as far as I'm concerned, are doing the same thing.
Oh, we've talked about that, I think that's,
I don't know why that second board was ever created.
yeah, I don't either.
Well, so.
This isn't, go ahead.
Can I a little bit, so, I think candidly, I think that's why we called the meeting at the end of this month. For both boards and commissions, to align their interests, their skills, their expertise, and their mission, right? I think in many communities, an EDC almost sort of operates, almost sort of like a chamber in some respects. I have a feeling that that's not an interest of RDIC. I may be wrong. I think that's probably what, when the previous select board approved the charge and the establishment of the EDC. So for example, the town planner has worked with the EDC to obtain a technical assistance grant to develop a business guide and business brochure, not just for example, industrial property, but all commercial property, whether that's infill, redevelopment, any sort of opportunities. I do think that there's opportunities for both boards to align themselves together. For example, the property on 68, I think that it's zoned appropriately for, I think, some of the work that is aligned with typical RDICs, but there may be some skills and expertise of the EDC that can support and supplement the work that, the very good work that the RDIC has done. It is new to me to see a board that is a deed holder to a property. I've never seen that before. I think it's interesting. I think it just provides for an opportunity for some autonomy, if you will, of RDIC. But the challenge that we have there, right, is we have regulatory boards, like the HPDD review board that's rooted in the bylaw, and then we have a planning board and a ZBA, so I think that this discussion over the past probably several years, especially since the EDC has been created, has been long overdue to talk about where are we. We have a new master plan, we have the existing master plan for the Heights property, we have the technical assistance grant, we have the open space and recreation plan that's coming. I think there's an opportunity for us to coordinate together. So I don't think that it's probably productive to have a discussion about what have you done over the past 20 years, can't do anything about it, to be honest, or the past, what's 2024 minus 1965, that's a lot, it's a lot of time. I think we can just do our best to move forward. There's a lot of good things, to your point, to the board's point, there's new staff that I think are really enthusiastic to support these boards and commissions. So I hope that the discussion at the end of the month can kind of align us and provide a clear direction for both boards. Obviously, we all report to the select board. So I also look forward to next month, or actually the end of this month, their goals and objectives that are then communicated to the boards and commissions and staff to carry out over the next year and moving forward. So, Mike, you have some comments?
Well, the only comment I'd like to make is, we have worked very hard to work synonymously with every other board in town. And that's one of our major goals, is to keep them involved. I get concerned when I hear that we're autonomous, and I understand why you're saying it, but I don't think anybody can say we've worked that way. I mean, we have certainly been open and shared every single thing we've done. So sure, we're the deed holder, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. I mean, we sold the property and we got a check and.
With all due respect, the RDIC negotiated that agreement without any direction from the select board, I believe, right?
The town administrator was part of the negotiating team.
Right, but you have autonomy through the bylaw and through the establishment of acceptance of Mass General law. You have autonomy that not other
I'm not disagreeing with
boards
that,
and
but all I'm
commissions.
saying is it troubles me if, and I don't know that you're suggesting this, that we are working as an autonomous board. If that's what you're suggesting, I take exception to that, because I mean, we have certainly been, well, the town administrator was part of the negotiations. How much more can we share with town boards than that? And it was his responsibility, in my mind, to go back to the selectmen and say, here's what's going on. Now, you'll remember, those who were there, I shared everything that was going on with you folks.
Yeah, no, so I'm not suggesting that you've done otherwise. I'm suggesting that I think the construct of the RDIC is very different than any other board or commission that we have in town.
No, I don't disagree with that, but that was set up,
Yeah,
set up by
so
statute.
candidly, and we did, this is obviously not a discussion for tonight, I think that many communities have, and I do believe that it may be of interest to the RDIC for the future, especially for your goals. Many communities have what is called a redevelopment authority, where they have a little bit more autonomy to be able to negotiate on behalf of the community. They're also this similar construct. You've almost been constructed to be a redevelopment authority without the full tools of a redevelopment authority. Now, I think that probably has created some barriers for the RDIC for progress, right? Because you still, for example, have to go to town meeting for what you think may be a good proposal. Now, that's the positive impact of that, is it goes to the town to be able to decide, right? So I think, again, a discussion about what's working, what's not, for the community, what's working and what's not working for the community, what's working for you folks, what's not working. Maybe there is a duplication, but we also have other examples of boards and committees that are duplicated. We have a events committee, we have a 4th of July committee, we had a 300th committee, but they found a way to work together somehow, and I think we can do that here.
I don't disagree. I just want to make it clear, this is a meeting that we have requested for years. Since the establishment of the EIDC, I've tried to get a discussion of what are they doing and what are we doing? And I've talked to the chairman of that committee and he says the same thing to me. I don't know what we're doing different than you, number one. So, and I've also, on numerous occasions, on previous town administrators, requested meeting of other town boards, selectmen, recreation. Okay, folks, we've got this land here. Before we sell it all, is there land that the town thinks would be a benefit to keep? And never got anywhere with that, so,
Have you asked me?
not you, no.
Okay.
No, and I certainly didn't mean to infer that.
Yeah. I'd love to meet.
Well,
I have a lot of
we're
meetings.
happy to meet.
Fortunately, I have a lot of meetings, but I think there's a good opportunity there, and staff. I think there's things that are mentioned to us just on a daily basis that we don't know, right? We don't know what the objective is of RDIC or EDC or Concom or any other point of board and commission. So, and I'd be happy to extend more invites to the meeting at the end of the month, maybe for additional relevant staff that may be interested. Obviously, you know, we have a lot of capital needs. There's a lot of land there for capital purposes, right? So we have recreational needs, there's a lot of land there for recreational opportunities, so. I'm optimistic about the future of RDIC, of the community, of EDC and any other board and commission. I think that we have good people in place at all levels to be productive moving forward, as long as we're all on the same page.
And through the chair, it would be very nice if the RDIC could get a little bit of money to help increase the beauty of that piece of property. Please.
So the RDIC has gotten plenty of money. I'm not suggesting that they don't need more resources to do the work. I just notified the chair that I requested $75,000 for assistance for the Heights property to align exactly with what they've been requesting for months. I'm just looking now, just at the top of my head, they received nearly $50,000 for various opportunities. And they've also received technical assistance grants. So I'm not sure that allocating more general fund resources is the answer. I think there's other ways we can utilize existing resources. You do have an existing article right now for a lot of the work that you're doing as well.
Okay. Okay, when the bill was actually put together in Boston for giving the town the property for the hospital, that bill, in my opinion, was written for today and not tomorrow, meaning now, going forward, okay? And so you were kind of entrusted with a very tricky situation there to get things started. And at points along the way, I really did not agree with the direction that you were taking. But then again, I also understood where it was that you were trying to squeeze the contract wording and make it fit the situation. So, you know, I think that, you know, yes, I disputed some of the things you did. And in the end, I really did realize what it was that you had to do. And I think you did a fairly decent job with it.
Thank you. To our committee.
And so I think, I was hoping that maybe the meeting could happen before, but obviously schedules and the holidays and everything is tough. So I'm hopeful that having this meeting and having staff on involved and everything between EDC and RDIC can do that. I was under the impression from the formation of the EDC that RDIC was involved in that formation. And so again, there seems to be a lot of he said, she said, they said, that said, who said, what said, and it's trying to just come together and figure out the best opportunity forward, again, not dwelling on the past, but and working together for the town as a whole. And to Austin's point, we do have we should have a new master plan, we'll have a new open space plan. Town's changed a lot in the 20-some years since the Heights property was purchased. So I think that there is plenty of opportunity to look at that as well as the existing town-owned property for economic purposes as well. So, thank you. Additional conversation or a motion? Sorry.
I've requested I know we wanna get things moving, but could we have the meeting like a week later than the time you have? Because I can't make that meeting as the second most senior person on either committee.
So can we talk about scheduling after, because that's kind of a committee scheduling thing. I believe that it was tough based on everyone's availability.
Yeah,
But
that was
I
the
don't know
best
for
that
sure.
worked for the majority.
Cause I think the intent was to make it a majority of EDC and RDIC and staff, and have it go that
And to try not to push it out too far.
So, thank you. From the board, conversation, discussion, or motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Michael Sullivan as a full member for a 5-year term expiring in 2029.
We have a motion, is there a second? A second. Motion and a second, additional conversation. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye?
Whitman, aye. We can, the additional ones below are liaisons, representatives, coordinators, and professionals, that's staff. Shall we go back to the conversation with CIPC? I believe Susan is here, is that, sorry. So can we go back to CIPC conversation to continue with that? And I see Susan's here, I don't see Daniel or Britton, they are both existing members of the committee.
Ms. Lopez, obviously, and I know Britton. I don't know the other gentleman, Daniel, sorry.
Daniel is an attorney on our team.
He's on the team already?
Yeah, he's been there 3 years. No, 6 years. Yeah, no, 3 years, sorry, he's been there 3 years.
And I guess I personally wanna reiterate that my concern is with the way the process was followed, not necessarily with the individuals. I think that there's well thought out, I understand Ms. Lopez, that you have an education background, and I think that there's a strong need for that, kind of knowing what's coming down the pipeline and everything, so I'm not questioning, Harry, your conversations or thought process or anything. It's more the process itself where we are hoping to have a pool of applicants and not just be presented, because then it doesn't become a board appointment, it becomes a board and committee appointment, and that's where I think my makes sense, hesitation is. So I wanted to just be clear about that.
Would you like me to postpone this for the next 2 months so I can go out and get more candidates? I mean, I've been working on this for months now, and I didn't move forward quickly because Mike hasn't resigned yet.
Okay.
So, tell me what you want, tell me what you want the chair of CIPC to do.
This is to me, this is a conversation about the policy of the process itself, and not any one specific chair of any board or committee, and just ensuring that we have a process that is fair to all the residents, as well as to this board as the appointing authority, that we are being shared. You asked a good question for conservation, were there any other applicants? Because I think that it wouldn't be fair if there were other applicants that we were being presented, and so
We're
I'm taking.
rehashing the same thing. Tell me what you want me to do as a chair. I have Susan here, who has been vetted, Mike has been vetted. Thank you for showing up today, Mike, appreciate it. We've had some good conversations. She is my choice for CIPC after everything I've done. If that's not good enough for you, if her resume isn't good enough for you, if her commitment isn't good enough for you, then send me back and I will do it again. Let's cut out with this middle stuff. We gotta make a decision here, because I have a meeting coming up and I wanna move forward on CIPC. We got a lot of capital stuff coming. We're gonna have school issues coming up. I need to get moving, so tell me what you want me to do.
Following what the other committees and commissions did, I would like to see the letters of interest and from all of the interested candidates presented, so the board can discuss what that is, including your recommendation. But for anybody, which to me, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, includes Mike, because he still seems to be interested. so the board can consider all candidates.
You understand? You want me as the chair to make my recommendation and then submit everything to you as the chair, so that eliminates Tamika doing that.
No, I want all of the information, all the letters of interest for any of the open positions for CIPC should go through the office. So
Okay,
Tamika can collate that.
Tell me who didn't.
That's what I'm saying. What, for whatever point in the
Mike
process,
and
Mike
Susan
has
were the
said,
only two that went through.
I don't have anything on Mike,
Yes, you
and he's not on
should.
this list
You
for
should.
consideration.
You should. It's on file. You should have it.
Saying.
Tamika should
But
have sent it to you.
He's not on this list.
Because he wasn't recommended on the list. So we're talking about two different things now. So tell me, we're gonna postpone this so I can go back and get Mike's stuff and send it to her, or you have it so we can get it to the committee so we can make a decision on that.
Can I
And then you want me to look for more people out there.
No, and nobody said anything
Come
about
on,
looking
Jen,
for
you
more.
gotta tell me
I never
what-
said anything about looking for more candidates.
No,
Nobody
I'm
is
saying you
asking
gotta be
you to look
clear
for
and tell
more
me,
candidates.
what do you want me to do?
May I ask a procedural question?
Yes.
If there are more interested parties than there are available seats, what would that look like on this appointment list? Is this just for people that are looking to be appointed, or is this just for consideration?
So in this particular situation, other than CIPC, there were not more interested candidates than there were seats. So anybody that expressed interest was on here and simultaneously received a letter of recommendation from that board or committee. CIPC was the only one that had more people than they did seats. And as part of the process, I would have had to have received a letter of recommendation from Harry for Mike.
Okay.
If Mike was to be included on that appointment list. There was also you said 3 people, but I don't know if that other person was not interested.
3 people didn't apply. I vetted 4 people. I talked to 4 people, but 2 of them were not interested. So they never gave you an application.
Correct, I did not receive any.
No. No, they were, I was hoping one of them would have been interested, but they weren't, so neither 2 were interested. So it didn't need to go anywhere if they weren't gonna apply.
So how would it look if, so this list is accurate because Susan is Harry's recommended new candidate.
Yes.
In addition to the reappointments. So how are we made aware that there were other interested parties that maybe were not recommended by the chair?
May I just speak to the previous instance when I was on a board that there were multiple candidates for a position. The office received and it was iterations ago of a town administrator and secretary actually, or executive assistant actually. So the office received letters of interest from all of those individuals. Some of them attended the meeting, some did not. They not only provided letters of interest, but in their letters of interest was a little bit of their professional background and why they would be a good fit because it was a board that needed a little bit more of a specific fit. And then the chair made one recommendation with consensus of the board. It was brought before, and I think some of it was because some of the interested members weren't aware that they needed that recommendation. So that's part of the reason that we've been trying to be more vocal as far as what the process is, that letters of interest come in through the office and they should make an effort to attend meetings or watch meetings on recording now that we have that option and meet with the board and or committee to make sure that they're a good fit. And then that letter would of recommendation would come from the chair. The chair could have or with the committee's consensus would have maybe 4 people that were interested in a seat. The existing committee sits down, discusses, makes a recommendation to authorize the chair to make the recommendation. And then that comes before the board, but all the applicants come before the board. So these are the applicants, this is the one that's recommended and why they're recommended over the others. And in that one instance that I remember, the board voted to go with a member who was not the recommended, it was not a reappointed recommended appointee, it was a new appointee because the board wanted a little bit of a change of direction of that board and committee. And, you know, I think for, you know, we heard from zoning that they try to be thoughtful as to like where their needs are, that they're balanced. I think CIPC, I think I hear from Harry that he's trying to do that as well. I think my question, concern again is the process that I believe zoning board has brought people before through the office so that there's multiple people that way. Or if any of us talk to them, I don't sit on, I'm not chair of any other board or committee or anything. So anytime I talk to people, I try to connect them, but I send them through the office to kind of have Tamika do that. And then if they're truly interested, they'll submit the letter of interest. Hopefully hopefully they submit the letter of interest and it's not because they've met with the chair or a member of that existing committee and was dissuaded from submitting it, if that makes sense. So that's, I think, a little bit of my struggle, and this has been an ongoing struggle with the policy as far as the board seating the boards and commissions, because we are responsible for seating them, but we need all the information to make sure that we're comfortable and confident with the information that we have. And if we're not getting all of that information, it's hard to be clear. So that's my.
So I guess for speaking for me personally, what I would like to see is if Mike is still interested, I would like to see his letter of interest, have him speak on his behalf at a separate meeting. Hear from both of the candidates, take Harry's recommendation into consideration, of course, as the chair. But the other piece that I think was also missing here is that it wasn't a committee discussion and unanimous or
Majority.
a majority vote, thank you, for the recommendations for the three individuals that are listed here.
Can I just say something, if you don't mind? In the process that I'm hearing a lot, and I understand, I respect everything I'm hearing. However, the process that I went through, as I said, it went through the office, first of all. I did attend a meeting. To me personally, I don't care if I go to 5 meetings and I have a list this long, it's up to the chairman of that committee to make those decisions. It's his committee and he knows what he wants to do. And you could have 2 or 3 candidates that are like right here, but maybe one has a positive strength more than another. I'm not dejected if at this moment that somebody else gets above me. Because in those conversations, it isn't as like Harry slammed the door on me, all right? I know that if another opening comes up next week, next month, next year, I'm gonna be right there. So I'm just saying, from my standpoint here, I think the process was handled exactly the way it should be done. And ultimately, you know, I respect what his decision is. And he would know better, I mean, the capital improvement. You know, it's his committee, I mean, he knows.
Well, this, if I may interject, Mike, I'm glad you're happy with how things went and that there might be other opportunities. Where I disagree with you is it's not Harry's committee. It's a committee of multiple people and each person has an equal say on what happens within that committee, and they should have a voice and be able to explain and comment on that and have a vote as to who participates in the committee. So that's where I would disagree with you on that. And that's one of the concerns that I have here is that these candidates, reappointment or new, were not brought before the committee to have discussion and have a vote. And there was no majority vote for selecting the candidates.
As I said, I did attend a meeting, I did meet the rest of members, except I think maybe one. So, I mean, I have talked to them. No, I understand that and I respect that.
My concern goes a little bit farther, it includes that and it goes a little bit farther even. And I think previously I had used an example, if we were appointing, if there's a recommendation from a chair coming in, and I'm gonna just pick on Council on Aging because it's an easy one to use this example. We have a chair of the Council on Aging who suddenly is not for the Council on Aging and wants to turn it into a daycare, let's say, like for little kids. Then that recommendation is coming from the chair and they're going to seat that committee to be what they want to do, and that might not be what this board wants. So then this board is ultimately the ones, we're the elected officials, we're the ones that are held accountable to that work. And I'm not saying that that's in this instance, but I'm saying that that is some of my desire to see the pool of applicants that we have, so that there's conversation and understanding as to the strengths and weaknesses that, you know, I can understand. I think Harry's thought process with the education piece, I don't know all of your background, Mike, I know some of it, but not all of it. So while I can understand that, is that what this board as a 5-member governing body feels is the priority for the next 3 years? Or is there something that would be better suited? And that's, you know, and I use that kind of council on aging versus almost like a early education piece as an extreme examples that wouldn't happen, but that's why I think there's importance to that process. And why I argue also not always taking the recommendation of the chair, that definitely needs to be considered, but it shouldn't just be a rubber stamp that the chair is rubber stamping a reappointment on something or an appointment on something when there's not a bigger conversation. So that's my process piece of it.
No, I understand, but also, you know, I think any committee, the chair and then that committee, you know, ultimately really is the key to make the decision, because it's on the work on their committee. And even if the board thought somebody else was better and wanted somebody better, that could be a conflict internally on the committees. I mean, ultimately, what the committees do and their charges ultimately work their way up to the board. And the board should be aware, I mean, you guys should have made, my opinion anyway, you should have meetings of every committee. And you would be getting all the information and knowing what each committee does, so.
So am I hearing Jen would like to see, and I mean, I don't disagree seeing the if there are letters of interest that exist, it sounds like maybe there are, maybe there aren't for additional candidates.
The only other one that I have is Mike's. In keeping with consistency with the other boards and committees, would you like this to go before the CIPC for a discussion as well?
I think that's, I mean, based on, Mike, it's up to you at this point, if you wanna continue and pursue, despite not being the recommended candidate for Harry. Now, you know, that's your prerogative, but either way, I still would like to see it go back before the CIPC for discussion and majority vote for recommendations for the 3 candidates.
Austin, go ahead.
I mean, I wish we could have everyone. My recommendation is actually a little different, I think, than the consensus of the board. We have, right now, and we know it's low, we have $40 million in capital needs. We know it's gonna grow, because we know that the most recent capital process was not as comprehensive as it should be and that it deserves. I think just looking at the credentials of Dr. Lopez, she is a very qualified individual, has served on the board of directors overseeing a capital funding campaign, worked in a community overseeing capital improvement processes. I think that she would be a great addition, and given the discussion tonight, I think that she would be helpful to the deliberative process of the entire CIPC. I think, Harry, to your question about what do you want the chair to do, what the board wants the chair to do, I think the chair should chair the committee. I don't think you need to be a recruiter. I think you just need to run the meeting and make sure that agendas and minutes are posted, and work with staff, myself, our finance team to go through the process. I respect all the comments, but again, we need to start this process now. By the time I come back from vacation, we'll be asking departments for capital projects, and we need to start that process now and finish that sooner, knowing the capital needs of the upcoming fiscal year. I do think Dr. Lopez would be a great addition. I think the 2 members would be continuing their service on CIPC. I think we can have a a good capital planning process. This year we had a 74-page capital plan. I think I wanna try to double it. Sorry, Harry, and sorry everyone that has to read it. Mike, I know you read that very extensively. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to think about the process for future years. And make sure that the expectations of all boards and commissions are communicated or over-communicated. Because we're getting to a point now where we just have had over an hour, if not more, discussion. Most of it related to one board or commission. I'm not sure how well it sheds on just the overall process. I think we need to look at it a little bit more and fine tune it a little bit more, but for such an important board or commission, I would just respectfully request to approve the slate as recommended.
If I may. I respect what you're trying to do, Austin, but we've had a history of act first and ask for forgiveness later, and I can't support that. I mean, this is something that it's been shared during this appointment process that it should be going to the committees for discussion and for voting, and that was part of what we were looking to have as part of our information here, so that should have been known. And so whether it may cause a delay in what you're trying to do, if it does, and if it doesn't go through here, I am very sorry, but I can't support not following the correct process. It just, to me, it sets a precedent, and somebody needs to put their foot down and say, there's gotta be a line.
So there's we can hold and ask for consideration by the CIPC, as I think at least one member feels strongly for, and or we can make a motion and see how it goes, or which is the kind of I mean, I think this is where it's tough, because for me, it's not the individuals, it's the process. And I struggle that we were given the information after 3:00 on Wednesday before it was after the offices were closed, and
It wasn't even given to us until today.
right, and it wasn't, so again, the process thing is the piece that kills me, I think.
So wait.
Yeah, just wait, cause I mean,
And like I said, it's not an individual for any of the individuals here, it's,
sorry, doctor, we're just trying to.
I completely understand,
We're trying to figure this
I respect the process, honestly, that's okay.
So you're saying that she needs to
That's
step
okay.
before the committee?
She doesn't have to do anything,
Well, no, you're saying that's one of the policy requirements.
It needs to be brought, all the candidates that are interested, it needs to be brought for discussion at a CIPC committee meeting.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
committee needs
That's what
to
I'm
discuss
saying.
it.
Jen, that's what I'm
They need to
saying.
vote on
Are
who they
you hearing
recommend
me,
for their
Jen?
things.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
I'm not saying I'm assuming she's already here, she may or may not come at your request, that's up to you. But I'm looking for the CIPC as a committee to discuss all of the interested candidates and to vote who they would like to recommend.
Alright, so we'll push that off.
Yeah. I'm not sure when CIPC is scheduled to meet yet next, so
I mean, there's 2 weeks, between the next meeting. Is it reasonable to think that the CIPC could meet plus?
just,
No, never mind.
I mean, we don't have to decide tonight, but just as soon as, cause I hear Austin and the hesitation with the timing. Moving on, we have the cannabis host community agreements.
Do we have to finish the other?
Oh, sorry, sorry, thank you.
So these are all just,
If you wanna just read the title of that section and just approve as a slate, since they're all members of the staff, if you're comfortable with that. you could just say, you know, to appoint the liaisons and whatever
Because a
title
lot
that
of, some of these
section.
were appointing the position, not the
Correct.
right
Yes,
person.
you're appointing the position, and then I just listed the name of the staff member for reference.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right, I make a motion to appoint, the town clerk for Ethics Commission Liaison, one-year term expiring 2025. Town clerk for Municipal Hearing Officer, one-year term expiring 2025. Town administrator for Chief Procurement Officer, one-year term expiring 2025. Richard Sauls for Constable, one-year term expiring 2025. Philip Cannell,
No,
Veterans Graves Officer, one-year term expiring 2025. Austin Saganowitz, ADA Coordinator, one-year term expiring 2025. Keith Tuttle and Tim Narwhal.
I think those are appointed by planning, right?
the alternate delegate is appointed by you guys, which will be for John Charbonneau.
Oh, okay, so it's not that one. John Charbonneau, as Central Mass Regional Planning Committee for one-year term expiring 2025. The DPW Director for Stormwater Advisory Committee, one-year term expiring 2025. Austin Saganowitz as WCRTA Representative, one-year term expiring 2025. The Boyle Group as the Healthcare Benefits Consultant, one-year term expiring 2025. Austin Saganowitz as Representative to Wachusett Earth Day, one-year term expiring 2025. And Town Clerk, Assistant Town Clerk, Fire Chief, RRECC Director, Chief of Police, and the Police Admin Assistant as Records Access Officers for one-year term expiring 2025.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions, concerns, conversation? Hearing none, roll call, Harry.
Second abstains.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. Those are the appointments, correct. Now moving into cannabis host community agreement, discussion of options for cannabis establishments. Austin, I know you provided, or in our packet, we have the kind of new developments from KP. I'll let you take this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's been a lot of movement in the cannabis industry since its passage in 2016. As you know, it's become decriminalized and legalized for sale of both medicinal and adult use cannabis. Early on, communities were asked to establish what is known as a host community agreement with marijuana or cannabis establishments for operating their businesses within the bounds of a community. These agreements typically contained, there was a contractual agreement between the community and the company dictating, in some cases, hours of operation, contributions to the community, compliance with local, federal, state law, permitting, things like that. Host community agreements are very early on contained provisions that were later found to be either unlawful or not in compliance with the rules and regulations of the Cannabis Control Commission. The Cannabis Commission in the Acts of 2022 promulgated additional regulations on these host community agreements that further nullified some of these provisions. So for example, there were early provisions in host community agreements that required or mandated a firm contribute a certain amount of money to a nonprofit in a community, or a certain additional percentage of their sales above and beyond the required sales tax to the community. Those were again found to be unlawful and not within the spirit of the law or the regulations, pardon me. So communities are now at a point where they either look at renegotiating their existing agreements, waiving agreements, or continuing with an unlawful agreement. There was a recent court case in the Superior Court, Haverhill STEM versus City of Haverhill, that spoke about existing agreements and saying that the provisions before these rules and regulations were put out, saying that those rules do not apply to existing host community agreements. Now, where that applies to Rutland, We currently have, we have 3 prospective marijuana establishments. One is a cultivation, one is a manufacturing, and one is a retail operation. All 3 agreements have expired. So we're at a point where the rules and regulations do apply to Rutland because we have expired agreements. We can't go back and modify an agreement that's already expired. Any new agreement would need to be in compliance with these rules and regs. So I'm asking for a little bit of direction tonight from the board. We can either renegotiate these contracts that are in compliance with the new rules and regs and some of the decisions that came down from the courts, or we can exercise a waiver. That is something that is new from the Cannabis Control Commission, essentially saying we waive our right to a host community agreement. Host community agreements are required as a part of the permitting process through the Cannabis Control Commission. And what does that mean? That essentially means that we waive our right to essentially having to exercise additional effort for support to the community. So for example, if we truly believed that having a marijuana establishment in this community meant that we are going to have more medical calls, and we can prove it, we can then put that in as a provision of our host community agreement. But then the onus is on us to document and prove it annually, not only to the Cannabis Commission, but also to the marijuana establishment. And then we essentially send in an invoice. And this was not like that previously. We could essentially just send an invoice, no requirements, and they would be mandated to send a check. This all came down because there were some communities that, let's just say, excessively asked for things from cannabis establishments that were above, I think, what is normal. And they really exercised a lot of attention on these host community agreements. Essentially, there's a burden on us to prove that the services we provide are burdened by having a cannabis establishment in our community. Now, we do not waive our rights because it's the law to still be able to receive the 3% sales excise tax on this. So when they're open and they're selling, just like meals tax, they're required to contribute the 20% and 3% of that comes to us. So just, I can go through that a little bit more, but that's just a brief primer. There's also a note from KP Law that talks a little bit about the recent court decision, but I'm just asking for a little bit of direction. I don't think any of the establishments, one is very close to being able to start the permitting process, but I think that they're still months away from being able to fully complete their permitting process. But again, this is a part of it. If you do decide to exercise a waiver, it's a simple form that we provide to the marijuana establishment and the Cannabis Commission saying that the town of Rutland has waived our rights to a host community agreement and the establishment can continue through the permitting process.
I'm sure we probably all have questions. I have a quick question.
Yep.
Do you know, if we put in for a waiver because this is kind of our first time through having any sort of marijuana establishment, so we're not, I think my sense from the public safety chiefs was that it was not going to be easy to prove that it was that the costs were because of that. But let's say a couple years into it, we've realized that for whatever reason, there's a strong need and we have the documentation to prove that. Is there a way to then essentially reopen the negotiation, or once you waive, is it just once we waive, or have we waived it for
Yeah, I believe the waiver is good once they've for the entire, so their entire permitting process, right? So unless they lose their permit with the Cannabis Control Commission, I don't believe we can withdraw our waiver in that respect. But just to give you an idea, and I won't name it, but $5,000 for consulting fees, $5,000 to the police department, 3% additional above the tax of their annual gross sales, contributions to a nonprofit in town of the choice of the Board of Selectmen. And that's just one establishment. Every agreement that we had essentially had similar provisions. Upon discussions with legal counsel, we didn't believe that any of those could be enforced reasonably.
I think from what I gathered from MMA, even just in conversations with other communities that have existing HCA's, that they're not being upheld even the existing ones aren't being upheld in court. It's, the courts are ruling in favor of the marijuana establishments. I think
Now, what we can do, so there's things outside of a host community agreement, so there's some really good provisions in, I think, our existing HCA's that talk about, preference for hiring Rutland residents. We can do that through policy, which is actually recommended from the Cannabis Commission, is to enact policy related to licensing of cannabis establishments. Because one thing that we haven't even discussed at all is there's also provisions in the law that mandate equity. And we need to also, for example, if any of these establishments go away and a new company comes in, we would be required to do essentially an equity search for a cannabis establishment. We don't have to do that because they're already essentially locked in with us and there's no licenses available. But I just wanna make the board aware that there's additional things through policy that we can and probably should be doing just to cover all of our bases here.
Through the chair, I don't believe I was involved in any of this. This is before my time on the board, but I'm fine with the sell. I'm glad the community is involved for tax purposes, get some revenue from it. The only thing I'm horrified by is the grow facility. Because if you've ever driven by a grow facility, you can smell it for miles.
Yeah.
And that is in a bad location. Those people over there in the central, they're in for a rude awakening. So again, I don't know how much conversation went into that. It's one thing to sell products. When you're growing it, I mean, you drive by the one in Fitchburg on Route 2, you can smell it. And it's pretty pungent, I mean.
So they're, Tamika just let me know, they went through, I think, the planning board and their probably site plan provisions. However, I think that's a common problem everywhere. They were sold when this law first passed, all these companies went through and they said, there's no way you'll smell. We have these very fancy high-tech charcoal diffusers, things like that. And you walk by and you can smell it. Unfortunately, I don't think the technology that they have does a good job of controlling it. It's one of those very pungent plants that.
You think of the location of this grow facility, it is probably in the worst possible location.
Respectfully, Tom, I don't know if we're gonna be the community to solve that problem.
Right.
I was gonna say, there's no way that we can HCA anything to do with that, right?
If anything, I think more from a public health perspective, if there's ways maybe the Board of Health can try to work with the applicant to try to mitigate it as much as possible, but.
I know it was a big concern through the public hearings with the planning board, and I mean, I think the applicants are aware that it's a big concern, but where that technology is.
I think we're gonna have lines outside this door.
Yeah.
Once that thing is up.
That's
Cause
a
it's
big-
pretty strong.
That's a big quality of life impact.
Yeah.
So is your sense,
Yeah. What about the ones that are outdoors?
Yeah.
There's currently outdoors that there's no charcoal sensor or anything or diffuser to be able to do that.
So-
But again, that company went through the process, they went through the permitting process, site plan process with our land use boards, and they were cited and permitted to be in the location that they're at. And I don't think it's within the authority of this board to change that, unfortunately.
Yeah, legally, I'm just saying, I think a lot of the people that were involved in this process years ago when it started, I don't think they understood anything about it, really.
Maybe just with a courtesy message that could be sent to the company or the planning board and just say, hey, we're whatever you guys decide, but we do have concerns about X, and hoping maybe the Board of Health can address that with the applicant. But again.
Knowing who owns the building, I wouldn't,
I will
I wouldn't lose any sleep waiting for them to look into that.
Yeah, I will say the applicant, I've had a lot of interactions with them, and they are very much excited to be a part of this community and willing work with the community to make sure.
Oh, I have no doubt of that, I just don't know that there's much you can do, like
Yeah,
Austin
yeah,
said.
but I think
I don't
if
know
there
that the
is, they'll
technology's there
definitely
yet, but anyways.
So going back to the kind of HCA consensus and everything, is it your sense, Austin, from like staff perspective, that it makes the consensus seems to be leaning towards going the waiver route because the burden is so high on the towns to prove administratively as well as documentation wise that the whatever's put into the HCA that needs to be executed before the establishment is opened is going to come to fruition. That the liability is for a community like Rutland.
Yes, I'm not sure we have the resources, even the communities that have more resources than we do are also expressing the same concerns of the burden that is placed on town staff to prove the impact.
And that's why I was wondering if, because these have to be executed before the establishment's even open, so it's not like we have any hard data from experience that we can pull from, right?
And so there was a community, I won't name it, that was actually sued by a current cannabis company for all of the monies that were paid through those provisions. It was over $1 million that the community, through a court judgment, is mandated to pay back to that cannabis establishment. So, and they went through the process, right? So that's another thing too, because this is all still very open from a legal perspective. I would just hate for the town to be put in a position where we may have to, a couple of years from now, pay something back because it was further found to be unlawful. So, in my professional opinion, I think the safest route is to waive it, take the tax money, and hope maybe there's some tools down the road through
Policy and
state law. I do think that there's gonna be some additional work here that's done. I think at some point, the licensing authority will go very similar to our alcohol licenses. She'll be the alcohol, she'll be the cannabis, she'll be whatever is legal at that point, licensing agent. Whereas right now, it's still very much a regulated industry and everything is controlled through the state cannabis commission. But for right now, given where things are, my recommendation is to exercise the waiver.
Through the chair?
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you, right now, we have a 3% tax coming in. And we haven't gotten any of the other stuff because it wouldn't probably have held up anyways. And here's where we are, so by giving a waiver, we're still getting 3% and we're not putting ourselves under a possible suit. To sue us for the money. Is that correct? If we do the waiver. Okay.
So do you want, I mean, we have it as discussion because I wasn't sure how much the board would wanna kind of have as a discussion. Austin, are you comfortable just taking the kind of consensus of the board? Would the board prefer a vote?
If the board feels comfortable making a motion, that would be great. I think we could then notify the CCC and the applicants of either the consensus or through a motion, but again, there's no rush.
I feel like given the, because would have to be reported to the CCC, that a motion would be appropriate. Is the board comfortable with a motion tonight, or would you rather put the motion off to our next meeting?
No,
Since
just
we've had this consideration, I don't know how much information people wanna take home and consider.
I don't, personally, I don't think there's a lot of information here for me to digest.
Okay.
We're going to, one way or another, we gotta follow state law, we're gonna get rid of all the stuff that we could have made money on, and we're not, so the 3%, I'm just as happy to vote for the waiver. And let's move, and just get moving on this thing.
Can I just clarify, is this like, there would be a waiver for each of the 3 establishments, or is it all considered? Okay,
Each of the 3.
okay, so and any new establishments that came in would have their own
Correct, we would then come back to the board and
individual.
ask what your position is.
So is there a motion then to exercise the waiver for the cannabis host community agreements
So moved.
for the 3 existing expired HCA's, sorry.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
A second.
Any other conversation? Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson, aye.
Ledger I.
Galvin aye.
Whitman, aye. And then going back to stormwater abatements, we, as Board of Public Works, I believe we have in hand 2 stormwater abatement requests. One has an, is asking for the $40 abatement. Dear Town of Rutland, please abate this charge. Our property actually handles stormwater and runoff with several drains that come off the road into the front half of our acreage. In fact, there are pools of water that stay wet for a good part of the year. While we do not appreciate that this leads to breeding ground for mosquitoes, we deal with it. So they're asking for an abatement. I believe that this is a developed parcel. And I don't know how the original permitting of this lot or anything went, but I don't think that we've put storm drains in recently in existing lots, for consideration. I think, for this particular one. I think the board in the past has just kind of taken for developed parcels, that it was developed parcel and that it was assessed the $40 and that it's $40 and that's that. But happy for conversation.
I agree with your assessment.
So for this one, Harry, Paul, for this one, it's the first one that we were presented with. Are you comfortable denying the request, given that it's a developed parcel? That I imagine has been this way since the existence of the development of the parcel. I don't know.
I have a question, I mean, I'm pretty much there, but what, I mean, it runs into drains, it runs into his field, where, I mean, that's still runoff, it's still stormwater in the field.
Great.
So I guess I don't know where he's coming from, but I don't see this as, just cause it's sitting in a field and it develops mosquitoes, that he should get, that there should be an abatement here, I guess, is the way I'm reading it, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that was a little bit my understanding, is it's still a developed parcel and we're not asking where anybody's water is going or who has storm drains or near their property or anything like that. You know, and this is the information that we're provided, it's not, you know. I don't think anyone's here to speak to this one, I don't know for sure.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I may, this part of the whole stormwater management is for maintenance of the drains that she's referring to, correct? Like there's, unless this was privately put in.
Yeah, I mean, if they're talking about drainage on their property, then no, but all the other public infrastructure, whether it's country drainage, other regular catch basins, culverts across the community, that's really what it's meant to regulate. But also, if, for example, they were taking the water and what's known as illicit discharge, taking that water and putting it into the municipal drain system, that is also within the regulations. So there is some overlap there in terms of like some pumps, for example.
Right.
Those are not permitted, right? And that's stormwater.
Yep.
So, Paul, do you have any comments on this one?
No, I've read it and I've looked at it and I'm just kind of saying to myself, okay, so I believe that the statements that have been made about it, yeah, it's just regular runoff. I don't quite understand why the need for an abatement.
So then, do I hear a motion to not abate? So, motion?
I'll make a motion to not abate the request on the stormwater bill for 13 Thurston Hill Road.
Second.
Any additional conversation? Roll call Harry.
Second, aye.
Mattson,
Ledger I.
Gallow, aye.
Whitman, aye. The second one we have is that, the the property owner paid $40, but moved in June of 2024, so the very end of the fiscal year. I believe, in the, registry of deeds ownership is that, the ownership exchange took place at the beginning of May. I can't remember how we voted for the previous one. It was a
partial
sale.
Did grant a partial abatement, so I gave the dollar amounts in the memo if the board were to decide to grant a partial abatement, how much that dollar amount would be.
Right. And I think that this is one of those ones that we talked about, we had done kind of for this first iteration through, saying that the partial abatement made sense, but then going forward. But the board is, I think, in keeping with how we had treated the previous one and knowing that we have the registry of deeds date of property exchange and everything. I think Tamika did the math and the property owner would owe $13.33 for May and June. So then the abatement would be $26.68, which essentially the town would refund. This
Because they paid
67.
Yeah.
Right.
If I may, from our last conversation about, I remember talking about whoever the property owner is at the time that the bill is issued was going to get it. Did we talk about partial year?
So,
or was that open-ended?
No, so I guess I'm curious, Jen, to kind of piggyback on what you just asked, was the original property owner
This is a new build, so the
Okay.
original property owner was the developer, and then this parcel was transferred to the new owner.
and because it wasn't a completed build, it wasn't assessed.
Correct, it was being assessed as land previously,
To that, okay.
but now it's a developed parcel, so yeah, so the person did receive the bill.
So I guess where I'm going is I don't think, I think my opinion is that we should stick with whoever the property owner at the time the bill is issued is the one that receives the bill. If there's, I don't think that it's too much administrative overhead to try and figure out if the deed changed hands at some point during the year for any of the sales. However, again, just thinking precedent policy, if we do have cases like this where somebody did move in,
A new build,
a new
right.
build or something, is that where we could have policy that states if they submit the paperwork for an abatement request for partial abatement, whatever that may be, that, assuming it,
If the board wants to provide some guidance, I'm happy to draft up like a policy that you can look at that just, so then you have something to go forward to say if it fits these categories, yes, if it doesn't, no. And even in that respect, technically, we could provide that to the residents when they submit a request and say, this is the policy that's in place. So maybe it doesn't even need to get before the board at that point.
Because I think, Jen, to your point, I think we did decide that whoever the property owner was at the date of billing was responsible, and it wasn't gonna be us to manage it because it becomes too cumbersome. But for the new construction, new builds that had not been assessed, and then.
I remember there being a discussion about would this bill, once it's no longer new, automatically be included in kind of that list of outstanding things when you go to close that have to be paid, like any water and sewer stuff or taxes, or would there be some sort of like municipal lien certificate, but for utilities, would this then be included? I don't know what
it
that
would
looks
be.
like, yeah.
But I think it's.
So maybe that would alleviate some of that issue going forward.
Yeah.
For property transfers, or for existing developed parcel transfers, but for this where it was like a
land to now developed,
Yeah, and so for this one, obviously because it's brand, so there's a whole process for utility fees that we have to, so there has to be a demand first and then we can go to leaning it, so we haven't gone through that full cycle yet of being able to, I think maybe, don't quote me on this, I wanna say we just sent out the first set of demands for this fee. So we haven't been able to go through a full phase of, for example, property transfers that maybe haven't paid this and everything else. So this is the first cycle of, it's probably a weird first year, right, cause it's brand new, have to explain it to a lot of people. And then when people start getting demanded or liened on their property because of this, there's probably gonna be additional questions that come up, but because it's a utility, we can and do follow the normal demand and lien process for these, very similar to water and sewer and any other collected but uncollected fees.
I know, I think, you cut it short, but I think we set a precedence where we did partially rebate. This is a legitimate one, I think we should follow through and rebate the 26 and change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that, you know, in this case, I just wanna make sure
Right.
that we're clear that we're doing this because undeveloped.
Of the movement of
Yes.
real estate, yeah.
Yeah. And there may be other cases for partial abatement that may not apply.
Right.
No?
So does that, so then I would entertain a motion to abate the $26.67, which would be a partial payment for the months of May and June that the registry of deeds shows ownership.
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, Harry.
Second, aye?
That's a,
Ledger I.
Galvin,
Whitman, aye. And Tamika, I do think if we can do some sort of policy or plan or something.
So just, I would hold on the policy because we're still adopting rules and regs.
Yeah.
That these are already, I think, in draft form, some things that address some of the
Okay.
concerns. And candidly, we're already in the rules and regs that were never adopted. So there's probably a lot of cleanup that's gonna happen when you guys formally adopt these.
If it
In
can
your
be made
capacity.
noted somewhere, whether it needs to go policy or rules and regs or whatever, that how, I think it sounds like the board's amenable to like new builds, that conversion being abated, but if it's homeowner, like existing parcel to existing parcel, not doing the partial, and it needs to play out.
For the sake of the minutes, is the board amenable to me including the street address?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Was it 52?
52 Grizzly.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Tamika.
No, that's okay, I just wanted to make sure. And to confirm, did Paul second that one?
What?
Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts.
I think-
Who seconded? I know Tom made the motion.
No.
Jen second.
Jen did,
I
thank
did?
you,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, you did it?
Sure.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think,
Sorry.
yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
It's either you or Randy, I don't know.
Yeah.
Going back, Austin, I think you have a brief town administrator update.
I'll be very brief, just wanna start, we did hear back confirmation from the Attorney General's office approving the bylaws approved at the special town meeting in February. The final requirement was town clerk needed to post it. Those requirements have been satisfied, the bylaws quote unquote have been posted. Essentially it just means that an order or posting has to go on, don't quote me on this, maybe three or five bulletin boards across the community. Those have been posted, so as of July 2nd, the bylaws are effective and in operation.
Austin,
Yep. And
I
included in your packet is some of the comments. They were all approved. There were some comments from the Attorney General's office on a handful of the articles.
and I just wanna, I'm not 100% sure that the newly updated ones are on the website yet.
They're not.
So,
The bylaw committee is, or the ad hoc bylaw committee, I think, is closing out their work in terms of updating kind of like the footnotes,
yeah, cleaning them up.
cleaning them up, and then they'll formally post them on the bylaws page.
I'm not sure if maybe there can be a note made on the bylaws when people go to direct them to kind of the drafts that are now.
We could
We
just
can
change
change
that
the
from
wording, yeah.
proposed to town bylaws.
Yeah, but even on the, because if you, on the website, when you click on bylaws or whatever, it takes you to the ones and it says through the May 6th, oh no, that's zoning.
You can change the
Yeah.
language on the
But just
website.
so that
No
some way
plans
that people are
approved.
going to the newly adopted ones, because I think even for us, there's some changes that we need to be,
Yep.
cognizant of, like.
Absolutely.
So, So Austin, just to be sure, as the committees and boards meet, they are now meeting under the official new bylaws.
Correct. And just a handful of some other updates, a few personnel updates. Our new treasurer collector, Nicholas George, started last week. Tuesday, July 2nd was his first day. He's been working with our interim treasurer collector to transition some of the like the names on the checks or on the bills, names on the bank accounts, things like that. We'll probably have Steve for another week or so to kind of close out some of the tasks and some of the projects that Steve was working on. And Nick will be ready to go. He's already kind of cruising on closing out the fiscal year, reconciling some of our cash. Very excited. Hopefully you all have a opportunity to introduce yourself. Also planning on having him attend a future meeting just to introduce himself to you folks in the community as well.
If I may, I stopped in and met him this afternoon, and I didn't realize he grew up in town.
He did, yep.
And lives in Barry now, so he's very familiar with
Yep.
Rutland, so thank you.
Also, new addition to our finance department, housed in the treasurer collector's office, is Diane Appleby. Her first day was today. She's our new finance clerk. This is sort of a quasi new position that was formed after taking a look at some of our existing positions in the finance department and looking at some of the gaps. One of the gaps that we had was kind of the customer service and some of the accounting work, so paying some of the bills that are included in your bi-weekly warrant. So we merged some of those responsibilities into a finance clerk position. Diane's got some really good experience in the private sector related to customer service and business administration finance. She, I think, will be a good addition to the finance department in the treasurer collector's office.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Why did she come to Rutland to take on this job?
I think she's in a position where the opportunity was perfect. It's only a 15-hour-a-week position. So I think from the interview, I think it works well. She golfs at Bedrock. So she's got her standing golf day, and I think it fits well with her schedule and her life at this time. And she had some really good relevant experience. I would imagine there was also a transition from her previous employer that this
So
opportunity
she's not
popped up.
working for anybody else now, she's, okay.
But even if she did 15-hour a week, it worked well for her in the schedule. And she also understands, as you know, there's some really busy days in the treasurer collector's office, like those due dates for bills. So she's already worked with Nick to make sure that she's available on those days, because those are often the days where not just treasurer collector, but our assessor's office also kind of gets slammed, especially when excise bills are due and people realize that they're paying for a car that they don't have anymore. So she knows to make herself available, so no golfing on due dates. Today's a day of first for many people. We also welcomed Steve Miller, our new water operator, to the water department. Steve worked for a private water operator responsible for the city of Leominster's water supply and treatment. So came from a much larger system and joins us. He's a water operator too, so he's got all the required certifications and slid right in. And he can essentially run the plant right now if necessary. And just as noted earlier, we're closing out fiscal year 24. I am not gonna give you a turn back amount right now, but I did the rough numbers today. And as long as Tamika doesn't spend all the money, we'll have a pretty good turn back. And that's not even talking about additional revenue. So I'm very satisfied, I think, with the year-end closing and look forward to providing that report to you folks as well. After the holiday week, the public safety and library roof repair project is starting back up. It's still ongoing. I would say that, there you go. Hopefully don't get hit with a copyright for that, but I would estimate both are probably around 50-60% complete. There's still some closeout work. I think the ice and water shields are up there. They're good, they just need to close and wrap some things up. The parapets are completely rebuilt here. On the public safety building, they completely closed off some really significant gaps. So really, once we opened it up, we saw exactly why there was water going into the building. let's just say some poor construction back in the day, unfortunately. Tomorrow, you'll notice a paving crew on Miles Road to close out the water main replacement project. You'll recall that that was a pretty messy project. Took a lot longer than desired to complete that. They really had some trouble testing that water main, so the trench there was pretty bad. Working with the contractor, they've agreed to completely pave that entire stretch of the road. Typically, they're only supposed to do about a foot on each side of the trench. They're gonna completely pave from essentially the line stripe to the berm. And that'll be done tomorrow, or at least started tomorrow. And then just a final update, the school security system, you may have seen some vans around town. They started at Central Tree Middle School for the installation. What they'll be doing is they're starting with the rough wiring and electrical for the 3 schools first, doing all the wiring, testing and installing the devices. They'll be done all of the interior work before the start of school. And if there's any exterior work need to be done while school starts, they'll be able to do that so they don't have to interfere with school operations. And that's it. For updates. Happy to take any questions.
I got a question.
Yep.
Miles Road,
Yes, sir.
I got questioned by a gentleman who lives on Miles Road. And he was.
I wonder if we know that gentleman.
I think we both know that gentleman,
We all know that gentleman.
And I'm wondering if what we're doing will fix any of the problems he's complaining about.
So that gentleman, we have met extensively with, under the agreement of the Public Works Director, Mass DOT, and the town consulting engineer. We provided a proposal based off of the requests of the resident, and we have not heard back from the resident. It's been several months.
Okay.
We are proceeding with that project. We've done a lot of work above and beyond typically what is done for these infrastructure projects to mitigate and make this particular individual satisfied. But again, we're moving forward with the project and still awaiting. We've also reached out several times to see if there's any additional thoughts and have not heard back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for town administrator?
Anything on Palmagussit Road down Molten Pond area?
Yeah, so the Office of Dam Safety is still holding up the, I think it's called the coffer dam, essentially a temporary dam, while the road closure and the culvert, box culvert is put in. They believe that there's some additional engineering that needs to be done on the coffer dam because the water levels are substantially different right now. The water levels are substantially different because we trapped, I'm gonna round up and say around 20 beavers down at the lower pond level, which substantially reduced, and actually in the upper pond as well, substantially reduced the water levels. So the state Office of Dam Safety is looking at that and they're saying, well, the water levels are different. The state, Mass DOT, CHA, our consulting engineer and design firm believes that it's probably over-engineered. If the dam is good for, I'm gonna say 8 feet of water, it's probably good for 1 foot of water. So we believe that, so the initial tentative start date was today. The backup was next Monday. We believe that it'll probably be by the end of the month, but they still believe that the dam will be repaired and replaced before the start of school. And that was an update as of this morning from Mass DOT.
And that's still with the temporary light, they're putting in a light?
No, so the proposal right now is for a 2-week closure of of Palmagussit. There's a road diversion plan that was presented to public safety to make sure that folks are aware for the 2 weeks, especially tractor trailer trucks. But it was initially going to be a several month project. They've condensed it to a 2-week project because of the road closure. So essentially closing the road, taking everything out and popping in a new culvert, paving over it and good to go. They do have backup plans if Office of Dam Safety comes back and says that's not gonna work. they do have a contingency plan to do a stoplight and just one way, or a single lane through. But again, their recommendation, and I think their plan A still is road closure for approximately 2 weeks. We'll make sure, once we know the timeline, we'll make sure to communicate that with folks, whether that's on, the one call to everyone, social media, any venue that's possible, to make sure folks are aware. And try to make sure we have a little bit more of a targeted communication to especially residents in that area that will be directly impacted.
Yeah, are they planning on sending everything back towards 56 and 122?
Yeah, so the heavier traffic, they'd like to keep on the main roads, so whether that's 56, 122A, is that what it is, and 68, keep the larger trucks on there. There's a pretty substantial diversion through Glenwood, because that's a little bit of a better road. And then any of the lighter traffic through some of the, unfortunately, the dirt roads where possible, but that's the least desired.
Yeah, they'll tear Britain apart.
Yeah. Especially if we get rain and.
Yeah, I mean, even the end of my street isn't technically a street yet. It's pretty rough.
It definitely will be an inconvenience, for folks, but again, trying to make sure that it's during the time when school buses aren't operating and.
Is it similar to when the tunnel was replaced? The diversion, do you know? It's similar to when the rail trail tunnel was replaced?
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know if I was around, but probably.
Randy Jordan. There's no reason they don't send some of the traffic down Intervale by the North Rutland Variety. That traffic there and the big traffic goes 68 to Wachusett Street. Glenwood is not a place to put large trailer trucks on. To go up that way.
So,
to do
yeah,
that.
so Randy, they're not proposing large truck traffic on Glenwood, they're proposing sending the large truck traffic, 68, 122, essentially keeping them on the main numbered routes.
You're gonna have trouble with extra cars on Glenwood as well, I think.
Yeah, which you could argue we have now, people that fly through and cut through.
And I think you'll have the same struggle on Intervale turn up as well. I mean, so it's just.
Yeah, if I may, I forgot to mention earlier, we released the link today to buy tickets for the Rutland Takeover Day at the Woo Sox on August 4th. We also shared the names of the folks that were chosen to be participants in the pregame ceremonies. We had put out a survey to the residents and they had nominated folks and then those names were randomly chosen. All of them have been contacted and are very excited to participate. So that information is out there on both social media as well as right on the homepage. We're gonna leave it right at the top of the page, right through until the game so that people can easily purchase the tickets. And a portion of all the sales will go towards Overlook Farm, which the residents chose as this year's nonprofit recipient.
A lot of kids.
No, so
Really?
the Woo Sox essentially tells us what the pregame ceremonies are and how many folks we need for that. So there's 6 kids that are set up to participate in different capacities for the pregame ceremony. Yeah.
Is there anybody presenting the colors?
I reached out and was told that there wasn't anybody to present the colors.
From the Woo Sox or from town?
Okay.
Well, aren't we sharing with the community of Sterling?
We are.
So I wonder if they may be dividing some of the responsibilities between
Just-
Rutland and Sterling.
The Boy Scouts were asked to do it last year. And I think if the Boy Scouts were asked, they would probably be willing to do it.
Okay.
I went this past Friday night to the Woo Sox. I don't think it was a takeover, but they had more activity before the game than during the game, I think. But they had nobody present colors, just a curiosity question.
I will follow up on that.
Where were you sitting, Randy? I didn't see you.
That was by design, Harry.
Probably was. Probably was.
Our next meetings are, our regular scheduled meeting is Monday, July 22nd. Then we have the goals and objective setting for both the town administrator and the board on that Thursday, July 25th, that's at the Wood Studio. And then our next scheduled meeting after that is August 5th. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none. I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Roll call, Harry.
Aye.
Ledger, aye.
Galvin, aye.
Whitman, aye. 9:04.